Wright State basketball has a new radio home on 1410 ESPN Radio and 101.5 Hank FM. Don't miss the Raiders all season long with Chris Collins and Jim Brown on the call. For tickets to upcoming home games, visit WSURaiders.com.
Before Nielsen Report.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. And now save 50% on the new Sleep Number limited edition smart bed. Limited time. Exclusively at a Sleep Number store near you. Learn more at sleepnumber.com.
All right, everybody, welcome in. It's the Justin Kinner Show live here on Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. Happy Friday. Excited to be with you guys here this afternoon. Live here at Wright State University's Nutter Center. Wright State going to be in action coming up later on tonight. Wright State welcoming in Northern Kentucky. Again, this is their second to last home game. Only 3 games left in the regular season. Northern Kentucky tonight, rivalry game. We'll be talking more about that coming up here in a moment. But I'm live at the Nutter Center. Happy to be with you here, 1410 ESPN Radio, Dayton's radio home, of course, for Wright State basketball. So a lot to get into here today. If you were just tuning in and hanging out with us on Off the Bench, we'll dive into a couple more things that we were spending some time on there. Major League Baseball and ESPN they're going to split after this upcoming season. MLB will be looking for a new home. And it's interesting because that's what I kind of want to open up with. You know, Rob Manfred, there seems to be a lot of different things coming out about what has technically led to this split between Major League Baseball and ESPN. All good reasons, okay? All good reasons for what could lead to this. But I think there's one reason in particular that I kind of disagree with, and it's coming from the side of Rob Manfred. Rob Manfred came out and basically said he was kind of not pleased with the coverage that his sport is getting compared to the other sports that ESPN has deals with. For instance, if you look at all of the attention that the multi-billion-dollar NBA deal gets compared to Major League Baseball, he feels that his sport does not get the notoriety or the attention that it deserves. If you look at the NFL, obviously they have their Monday Night Football, partnership. They get that one game a week, but yet look at all the NFL studio shows and the sport. That's what drives the ratings at ESPN. So he feels that they don't get enough attention similar to that. If you look at all of the TV deals that ESPN is partnered with, baseball gets the least coverage, or at least that's how they feel compared to the other sports. So I bring this up because a few years ago, I was in New York City. We had our sports media conference there, and I was with Bobby Carpenter, played at Ohio State. At that time, he was working for First Take. He was working for Get Up, and this is when he was with ESPN. So he was doing ESPN's Get Up in the morning. He would, guest on First Take from time to time. And I got to go in and sit in on First Take with Stephen A. Smith, and at the time it was Max Kellerman. I remember Get Up, obviously Dan Orlovsky, Dominic Foxworth, and Laura Rutledge, and everyone was doing that show that day. But there was one unique thing that I noticed kind of sitting behind the scenes. They have this monitor off to the side that they are constantly tracking the viewership activity. So what they end up doing is for all of their segments throughout the show, they end up having more segments planned than they actually have airtime. And the purpose for that is they track the live viewership. And if the live viewership continues to climb for a certain topic, they'll extend that topic into another segment. The goal is if you have a 6-segment show, they're going to have 10 segments planned. And the goal is that if you get to all 10 segments, that means it wasn't a good show, because that means there wasn't enough viewership spike for any of the topics you had planned. So you were constantly bouncing around trying to find something that would stick. So I found that interesting because what ended up happening is it was a lot of Dallas Cowboys talk. Yet a lot of you will sit there and say, well, ESPN, you do way too much coverage of the Dallas Cowboys. Nobody cares about the Dallas Cowboys. I'm here to tell you a lot of people care about the Dallas Cowboys. They follow the viewership spikes. And if the viewership spikes spike, that's what they stay on. So I sat back and I monitored that. I thought that was fascinating at the end of the day. You may think, well, man, there's some sports that ESPN likes to beat up on. It's not that they enjoy beating up on that particular sport or enjoy beating up on that particular team, but they may notice that, hey, there's a viewership spike when we do start to be critical of X, Y, and Z. For instance, Colin Cowherd on obviously on Fox Sports. If you notice, like the Baker Mayfield thing from years ago, what was his obsession with Baker Mayfield? Colin Cowherd was not obsessed with Baker Mayfield. You were obsessed with Baker Mayfield. What is ESPN's obsession with the Dallas Cowboys? ESPN is not obsessed with the Dallas Cowboys. You are obsessed with the Dallas Cowboys. When they talk about those particular topics, that's what spikes the viewership. That's what they stick with, and that's why they stay on those topics as much as they do. Man, we're so sick and tired of hearing about LeBron James, and we're so sick and tired of hearing about the NBA. I'm here to tell you, the NBA is very unique. NBA viewership is in the toilet right now. Like, it's down. I mean, 5% may not sound like a lot, but they are down. I mean, they have lost millions of viewers from a year ago at this time. So they're down 5% from a year ago, and that may only equate to 1.5 million people. But folks, I'm here to tell you, I don't care how big your business is. If you lose 1.5 million customers in any line of work, that's a bit of a problem. But they can't get people to tune into their games, but they have no problem being able to get people to tune in, to listen about their games, if that makes sense. The NBA is a storyline-driven league. You know, I can't tell you, Luka Doncic has technically been on he's been on the Lakers roster for 6 games. He's played in 4 of them, and he hasn't been any good in 3 of them. Right? But all people want to hear and talk about is Luka to the Lakers. LeBron, you think there's a LeBron fatigue? You would think that there's a LeBron fatigue, but there is not. The reason they talk about LeBron so much, you keep it dialed in. When you keep ESPN radio on and dialed in, they're tracking that. They know what topics you want to listen to or listen about. Oh, Ken, there you go. You constantly keep talking about the Cincinnati Bengals. You just bash on our Cincinnati Bengals. There might be a reason for that, right? I mean, I enjoy it. Don't get me wrong. I kind of like bearing your team. I'm a Browns fan. I kind of enjoy it, right? But like, there's a reason we do what we do. Even for a small radio station like the one I'm with, I'm not comparing me to ESPN's First Take or anything, but it's all relatively the same. So I bring this up because Rob Manfred is complaining that the ESPN studio shows do not give the same attention to their product that they do to the NFL. I think we all know that the NFL is king. We could talk NFL for hours. That's going to be the driving force of a lot of content at ESPN. The NBA, although people aren't tuning in for the games themselves, they are tuning in for the storylines that surround the sport. What's interesting about Major League Baseball? No, it's a real question. I'm asking you. What's interesting about Major League Baseball? I know what's interesting about the Cincinnati Reds. I love Ellie De La Cruz. I love that Terry Francona is leading the way for the Cincinnati Reds, but I'm very curious. What's interesting about baseball as a whole? There's a lot that's interesting about the NBA. LeBron James, Luka, the fact that athletes don't care about the sport anymore, it seems, right? Like the drama, the trade demands, get me out of this city. I don't want to be here. I don't want to play back-to-backs. I'm going to sign a $350 million contract, and I'm not going to be even readily available for the first 2.5 months of the season because all I care about is the postseason. Those are all talking points. That gets the people going. You know what I mean? Like, that gets people into it. Right or wrong, people care about those things. There's nothing interesting about baseball. There's just not. And I love baseball. I absolutely love Major League Baseball. I'm a huge Reds fan. I love everything about the Reds. But baseball as a whole, I don't really care. I should. The Dodgers are an interesting storyline. The fact that they keep hogging they're spending more money than everybody else, right? The fact that they have a Mookie Betts, the fact that they have a Shohei Ohtani, the fact that they have a Clayton Kershaw, the fact that they just keep dishing out money like it's just candy at Halloween. It's ridiculous, right? I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Rob Manfred upset with ESPN. One of the reasons that they are splitting is because he is not pleased with the coverage that their sport gets. I said all of that to put it back on you, the viewers, not of necessarily of this show, but just of ESPN and Fox Sports and CBS Sports in general. The reason that First Take and the reason that ESPN's Get Up and obviously the morning shows on ESPN Radio, any show on ESPN Radio throughout the day, the reason baseball is not the number one talking point on all of those shows, it's not because ESPN head of personnel and content creator is sitting there saying, I hate baseball, we're not going to talk baseball. No, it has nothing to do with that. It's because when they do start to talk baseball, they're watching the viewership spikes go to viewership plummets. You, the viewers, don't care about Major League Baseball. Rob Manfred's mad at the wrong people. I was fascinated when I got to do my tour of ESPN that time and got to learn a little bit about how they kind of track the live viewership throughout the show. Absolutely fascinating. That's how they pick. The fact that you have 6 segments, they have 10 segments planned. And if you get through all 10 segments, that means it's a bad show because there was no viewership spikes to hold you on a topic for multiple segments. That's what I learned in my day hanging out with Bobby Carpenter at ESPN that day. And I'm here to tell you, Major League Baseball, what sells for Major League Baseball? You want to know what sells for Major League Baseball? You know what they need? You know what Major League Baseball needs to be relevant compared to the other sports? They need a scandal. That's the only time people really, truly care about Major League Baseball as a whole. Don't get it twisted. I don't mean like, oh, you don't care about the Reds. I care about the Reds. Some of you care about the Guardians. All right. All of you have your team that you care about. But as a whole, what are the top 5 storylines in baseball as we head into the 2025 season? If I told you to give me 5 top storylines for baseball, but you can't use one from your team, can you do it? I don't know if you can. That's not a challenge. I'm not poking fun at you. I'm just saying I don't think that you can. The only thing that can save baseball is a cheating scandal. You may think that's a goofy thing to say, but it's true. The only time that baseball is front and center, front of mind awareness. Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, right? Steroids. Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, steroids. The steroid era was fantastic. Baseball needed that cheating scandal. All right? And you may not say that that's, it's not healthy. It's not a good thing. That's why baseball's not as healthy as you think. You need drama for that sport to sell. It's just it's the reality of it. Let's see what else. How about the Houston Astros, the cheating scandal? Man, baseball was talked about on every sports talk show out there. Man, the Houston Astros, are they a legitimate are they a legitimate World Series champion? Is there an asterisk next to their name? We talked about the banging on trash cans and the cheating scandal for the Houston Astros for years. We talked about the steroid era and the cheating of Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire. We talked about that cheating scandal for years. A couple years ago, remember when the pitchers were getting suspended left and right because they were admitting to using the sticky tack on the ball and you're not allowed to use that and they got caught? We talked about that for weeks and months. You remember a year ago, by the way, baseball, if you want to talk about the most unique thing about baseball, how about the fact that there is a player doing something that has not been done since Babe Ruth? I wasn't alive. No one was alive. How many of our viewers were alive when Babe Ruth was, pitching and hitting? All right, let's just be clear. Shohei Ohtani is a unicorn when it comes to Major League Baseball. Shohei Ohtani, at this point, should be the biggest athlete in the world, and he might be a global star as far as baseball outside of this country. But we don't care about any storylines with Shohei Ohtani, except for when we thought there was about to be a big sports betting scandal that surrounded him. Remember the sports betting scandal that came out right about a year ago at this time as spring training was getting underway? Shohei Ohtani, all of a sudden there was a lot of these bet slips that were starting to go back towards his bank account, and then come to find out that, wink, wink, his interpreter ended up being the one that was using his bank account to place all of these sports bets, and Shohei Ohtani got out of it. But I tell you what, baseball would have been the number one talking point had the face of their league been caught up in a sports betting scandal. Baseball technically kind of needed that, if that was the case. It stinks. That's just the reality of it. Baseball needs a scandal to be relevant because it's too regional of a sport. We love our Reds. When the Reds disappoint us by the end of April, we're looking onto the Cincinnati Bengals. We're looking on to the Cleveland Browns. We're looking on to the Ohio State Buckeyes. Bring on football. We're just drooling for football by May because our baseball team lets us down. Hopefully that's not the case this year. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show here on Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM, live here at Wright State University's Nutter Center. Wright State in action tonight. Their second to final home game of the regular season. They have their rival Northern Kentucky coming into town. First 4,000 fans in attendance tonight. We'll get the Wright State T-shirt again. I'll have that shirt to show you coming up here in a moment. But we do have tickets. We're giving away tickets. If you want a pair of tickets for tonight's game against the Northern Kentucky, 7 o'clock to tip off. Send a note on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. First come, first serve. I'll get as many tickets out as I can. The Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. Send a message on the Facebook page, and I'll make sure to send your email. So go to the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. Send me your email, and I'll send you a pair of tickets. First come, first serve. We have quite a few, so make sure you get there and take advantage of that. And we'll hook you guys up with some tickets for Wright State in Northern Kentucky here tonight. I'm curious your guys' thoughts on when it comes to Major League Baseball. Rob Manfred, does he have a point? Are you on his side? Are you upset that ESPN doesn't give baseball the coverage that you think it deserves? Or do you agree with me that it's not what ESPN wants to talk about, it's what we want to see. It's what we want to hear about. And baseball just isn't at the top of everyone's priority list. If I promise you this much though, if they're talking Ellie De La Cruz and Hunter Green and Terry Francona on ESPN's Get Up tomorrow morning. I'm going to make sure I'm there to listen. If Terry Francona is being advertised for First Take with Stephen A. Smith, I'm going to tune in, but because I have an interest there. But there's not enough storylines that interest me that I'm going to stop what I'm doing to tune in. But Stephen A. Smith and Mike Greenberg and these guys, like, they have all created a rapport with their audience to where when something happens in the NFL, I want to know what that show has to say about it. When something happens in the NBA, I may not be watching the game that night, but Stephen A. Smith is going to have something to say about it. I got to tune into that show. So at the end of the day, it just comes down to Major League Baseball. ESPN didn't do you wrong. You just don't have a brand of a sport that people prioritize as much as the others. And that's coming from someone who does. That's coming from someone who truly does care about the Major League Baseball and the Cincinnati Reds. But as a whole, not so much. All right, I'm Justin Kinner, the Justin Kinner Show. We'll step away for a few moments. As you guys know, the Cincinnati Reds signed a new media rights deal, of course, with FanDuel TV. At first, they were going to all their games are going to be streamed with MLB, and there was going to be some limitations there. But there are quite a few options for you to be able to watch Cincinnati Reds baseball this upcoming season. Yes, FanDuel TV, but also on Amazon Prime. We'll talk about that more. I'll tell you the pricing breakdown. I'll give you more information on that. Plus, we'll talk a little bit about Nick Martinez and how he stacks up in this Reds rotation. Who is the second best pitcher for the Cincinnati Reds? We know Hunter Green is the best pitcher for the Reds. Is Nick Martinez the second best pitcher for the Cincinnati Reds? We'll discuss when we come back. More of the Justin Kinner Show next.
ESPN 1410 Wing AM weather.
The forecast is partly cloudy and 16 tonight. Decrease in clouds and 35 for the day tomorrow. And on Sunday, we're looking at sunshine and 42. I'm Rick Schremp for 1410 ESPN Radio.
1410 Wing AM, Dayton's ESPN Radio, powered by.
Let's see, if something costs less, a lot less, but people are actually happier with it, that sounds like something to look into. And that's MetaShare. Maybe you've heard joining MetaShare can save you or your family up to $500 a month. And that's huge, but it's also true. People are just happier with it. They love being part of something that reflects and promotes their values and what they believe in. MetaShare works too. It's been around for 30 years now, and members have shared more than $7 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network. So yeah, really, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care, whether you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan that you're happy with. Here you go. You can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. A very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. It's 877-26-BIBLE. That's 877-26-BIBLE. 877-26-BIBLE.
The NCAA First Four returns to the epicenter of college basketball. Dayton supports our military community, and the Big Hoopla aims to give back. Starting selection Sunday, March 16th, it's a full day of family fun with the Big Hoopla 4-miler and free STEM challenge at our new location, Wright State University. Then the road starts here, Dayton, with the First Four at UD Arena, March 18th and 19th. Visit DaytonHoopla.com for more details.
Everybody knows that Roosters is a fun, casual joint with their award-winning waitstaff, great food, fun, and laughter. It's a quick stop on the way home to sit back and unwind. It's a front row seat to the big game. Roosters is where you, your family, and friends can order pizzas, sandwiches, salads, and more. And the home of award-winning wings that are fresh, never frozen, and so big you won't believe it. It's your family's other dinner table. Roosters, a fun, casual joint, and the official wing sponsor of Ohio State Athletics.
Okay, I have to tell you, I was just looking on eBay where I go for all kinds of things I love, and there it was.
That hologram trading card. One of the rarest, the last one I needed for my set. Shiny like the
designer handbag of my dreams. One of a kind. eBay had it, and now everyone's asking, ooh, where'd you get your
windshield wipers? eBay has all the parts that fit my car. No more annoying, just beautiful.
Whatever you love, find it on eBay. eBay, things people love.
Progressive knows finding your new home was a dream come true. You wanted a walk-up with central air and a skylight, and you found it. Now, every Friday night, you get to fall asleep to the sound of your downstairs neighbors' dance parties. Progressive can't save you from your noisy neighbors, but we can save you money when you bundle your home and auto with us. Get a quote at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers not available in all states.
People are talking about Carol Wirtz Tire and Auto Service.
We've been taking our cars to Carol Wirtz for several years. Our experience is always outstanding. Every employee truly cares about the safety of your car and making sure you are satisfied. They are trustworthy and treat you like family. Thank you, Carol Wirtz, for always taking care of me and my family and making sure we are safe.
Carol Wirtz Tire and Auto Service treats every vehicle like their own and each customer like family. Call 937-461-5441 or visit c-wtire.com.
Between all the holiday parties,
weekend tailgates,
and family get-togethers,
we've been overindulging a little more than usual over the holidays. But now, we are starting the new year off on a healthier note by taking Active Liver supplements from New Nordic every day.
Active Liver contains a powerful blend of turmeric, milk thistle, and globe artichoke extract, all natural ingredients that help protect the liver so that it can protect you from toxins. It's like giving my body a daily detox. I've never felt better, and my energy is through the roof.
And my doctor is already impressed with how much better my numbers are looking. So if better health, more energy, and detoxing your body are some of your priorities this year, get Active Liver today and start the year off knowing you're giving your liver some well-deserved relief.
Active Liver is available in both tablets and as a delicious gummy. You can find Active Liver in stores at your local CVS or online at Amazon or newnordicusa.com.
Lowe's knows that your business is built on speed and trust. That's why the Lowe's Pro Desk is here to get you what you need the moment you need it. We'll help you plan your project, calculate your materials, and pivot when your job takes an unexpected turn. And with our pro-only checkout and dedicated pro parking, you have what you need to tackle your job and be back on the job in no time. Just visit us at the Pro Desk. Lowe's knows pros. We help. You save.
I had the worst dream last night. You were in a car crash and the kids and I were on our own. We had to move out of the house because I couldn't afford it anymore.
That's awful, hon.
My brother was saying he got life insurance from Ethos. With Ethos, it only took 10 minutes and he got $2 million in coverage for around $2 a day. It's all online. No medical exam. He just answered a few health questions right from his house.
Ethos, here we come.
Visit getethos.com. That's getethos.com.
Sample rate is a 10-year term life policy for 35-year-old healthy, non-smoking male. Billed monthly.
All right, everybody, we welcome you back. Justin Kinner with you here on Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. The Justin Kinner Show coming at you live from Wright State University's Nutter Center. I'm here setting up early. Chris Collins, Jim Brown going to be on the call later on tonight. Wright State welcoming in Northern Kentucky. Of course, the rival out of the Horizon League. Only 3 games remaining in the regular season. And, two of the final 3 here at home. They got Cleveland State next Thursday night. That's going to be a late tip-off, a 9 o'clock tip-off next Thursday night. That's an ESPN tip-off, for their final home game of the regular season. And then they'll wrap things up on March 1st against IU Indy, and then it's Horizon League tournament time. And of course, as you guys know, for mid-major basketball, that's the most, obviously March Madness, the most important tournament. But for that to even become a thing, you have to get through the Horizon League tournament, and it all comes down to that. So it's been an up and down, rocky season, obviously, not being able to really kind of string together, consistent wins throughout the year. But 7 losses this season by 1 possession or in overtime, which is the second most in all of college basketball. So they've been right there. They're on the cusp of just a couple more plays going their way throughout the season of the narrative being completely different. So bottom line is they could play with literally any team in this conference, which means because of that, they still have a shot, obviously. They got to get through these final 3 games of the regular season, create some momentum. Cole Gentry, who's on the staff, who played for Wright State from 2017 to 20, part of their NCAA tournament team when they faced Tennessee back in 2018. He's going to hang out with us coming up here shortly. His first year on the staff with first-year head coach Clint Sargent. So we'll be joined by him shortly. All right, we open up the show talking about, of course, the split between ESPN and Major League Baseball. And a lot of people are kind of ripping ESPN for that. I'm not really defending ESPN because, we're an ESPN affiliate. I don't really care about that. I just almost spilled my water all over our equipment. Luckily, there's a lid. Anyways, ADD, focus here. No, I don't. It's not like I'm defending ESPN because we're an ESPN affiliate. I've just I know how this stuff works a little bit, and I think it's a little ridiculous of Rod Manfred to come out and say, we don't want to be partnered with ESPN anymore because you don't give us the fair coverage that you give, the NFL and the NBA. And they tried using the plummeting NBA ratings as why do you keep talking about the NBA when nobody watches the NBA? The NBA for 3 straight years, they're obviously the ratings have continued to crash more and more and more. The bottom line is people may be watching the NBA less in regards to tuning in to watch the games live, but they are not turning it off when it's being talked about on these national sports talk shows. At the end of the day, like I shared the story, I had a chance to sit in on an ESPN First Take and ESPN's Get Up taping years ago when I went in with Bobby Carpenter when we were both in New York for a sports conference. And they literally have a live tracker while they are doing certain sports topics. They're able to track the live ratings peaks. And if they keep peaking, they remain on a certain topic and stretch it out as long as they can. And if they start to see numbers dip in the middle of a segment, they literally jump out of that and they move on to the next topic. You dictate what ESPN talks about, not the other way around. I heard a lot of that about the WNBA as well. It's like, it's funny. You talk about Caitlin Clark a lot. Now people care about basketball, or she was the one that people wanted to hear people talk about, and that's why they started tuning in to listen about basketball. And that's not a shot at women's basketball. That's not a shot at anything. That's just the reality of it. Right now, the NBA doesn't have a player that is a huge draw outside of LeBron James. Like, there are stars. There's Luka. There's Joel Embiid, right? There's the Kawhi Leonards. And now I'm all over the place as far as ages of these players. Like the future of the league is Wembanyama, which something horrific has happened with him, which we'll talk about coming up here in a moment. But the bottom line is that draw does not exist in the NBA. You went from Larry and Magic right into the Michael Jordan era. And from Michael Jordan, you had Kobe and Shaq. And Kobe and Shaq, you went right into the LeBron era. And LeBron has dominated for 2 decades, along with Steph Curry and Kevin Durant and guys like that sprinkled in there. But that baton has been handed off from decade to decade to decade. But this decade, I don't know who that player is that they are handing that baton off to. They don't have that draw. So you dictate what these shows talk about, not the other way around. As the example I gave earlier, people get so angry. All ESPN does is talk about the Dallas Cowboys. All ESPN does is talk about LeBron James. You know what I mean? Like, all NBA does is talk, all ESPN does is just talk about the brand. They talk about your Yankees. They talk about your Lakers. They talk about your Cowboys, the big branded names. That's because that's what moves the needle. That's because that's when they talk about those teams. For so many of you that say you don't care, there's a million more of you that do. And they outnumber you. It's as simple as that. But anyways, I think that baseball, the only time baseball has been relevant as a big time talking point has been when there's a scandal. If Major League Baseball headlines are front and center, when they take away headlines from the NBA, when they take away headlines from the National Football League, when they take away headlines from the major sports that are out there, it shouldn't be a surprise. It's because it's Major League Baseball. I think you have the NBA, the NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball, the 3 most popular sports in the country. But it's still a surprise when baseball gets a lot of heavy talking points. And when that does happen, it's usually a scandal. Oh my gosh, steroids. The steroid scandal, the Barry Bonds, the Sammy Sosa, the Mark McGwire, the Roger Clemens. You go down the line of names that were the face of the steroid era. But baseball was the number one talking point for most of the 2000s, but not for the right reasons. Years ago, less than a decade ago, it was all about the Houston Astros, and not because they won a World Series. It's because they cheated to win the World Series, right? Like, that's when we talked the most about Major League Baseball. It was about the cheating scandal. Then they had a villain. People were tuning in to Astros games because they were rooting against the Astros because you hated everything about the Astros. You did not want to see them succeed. You booed Altuve. You booed anyone that was associated with the Houston Astros. That's just how it worked. A year ago, Major League Baseball was about to embark on what we thought would be the biggest scandal since the steroid era in the early 2000s, when Shohei Ohtani was linked to a possible sports betting scandal, as his name was linked to quite a few sports books. Although it turned out, wink, wink, if you believe it, it turned out that it was his interpreter that was using his credit cards and using his information to go and place these bets. And if it wasn't for them finding out that it wasn't him, this would have been the next big thing that baseball was in the headlines for. But the bottom line is, we don't talk about the World Series champions. We don't talk about the great individual performers. We don't talk about the stars. We don't talk about the unicorn that is Shohei Ohtani. We just talk about cheating scandals in baseball. That's it. That's it. That's how it works. But nonetheless, the Justin Kinner Show live here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Let's go to the Justin Kinner Show on Facebook. Alex Early, and excuse me real quick. Well, of course, right as I do this, my laptop freezes on me. So I'll get back to the comments coming up here in just a second. There we go. We're good now. Alex Early says, I think a lot of this is burnout. There's one sport that is not year-round, going all the way down to youth sports. If you miss something, it's okay. There's a game tomorrow. Baseball, basketball, year-round. I may be missing the point, but people talk more ownership in football, because if you miss something, viewership goes crazy. Baseball and basketball, not so much. And I think that has something to do with it too. Baseball, you're not tuning into every single game. You're so concentrated on your team. Your team plays every day, right? But then again, the NFL, well, your team's playing. Every other NFL team is playing as well. I just don't think baseball is front and center as far as the league as a whole. Your team is. We're talking Reds. We're thinking Reds the entire time. That's about it. But as far as the league as a whole, I don't know. I understand people's frustration. Ann Anderson, how are you doing, Ann? I appreciate you tuning in. Ann says, I'm a radio person. I very seldom watch baseball on TV unless it's the Dragons. But I love baseball. I don't like the talking heads on network TV. Give me Marty and Joe, Mel Allen, Bob Prince, Red Barber, Vince Scully any day. And yes, my age is showing. So what? No, and I agree with you. Trust me, I love listening to baseball on the radio. No doubt about it. Appreciate you tuning in. Continuing to go down the list. What up, Matthew? Matthew Sense on Facebook as well says, I think the lack of salary cap is also hurting the sport. While the Dodgers and New York teams can be exciting to watch, no one outside those markets wants to watch those teams play every day. We want to cheer for our teams, bring those talented players to the smaller markets. But here's the thing, though. For instance, Ellie De La Cruz is in Cincinnati right now. Vlad Guerrero Jr. is with, obviously, he's right now with the Blue Jays, right? They didn't get a contract done with him. He is going to hit the free agent market a year from now, and he's probably going to be a Dodger. We already know he looks good in blue, right? Like, he's going to be a Dodger. He's going to be a Yankee. He's going to one of the high-spending teams in Major League Baseball, and there's less than a handful of those teams. I bring this up because while people want to blame the Dodgers, people want to blame the Yankees, people want to blame the Padres and the high-spending teams in baseball, I'm here to tell you those teams aren't hurting baseball. Our team is. The Reds, the Pirates, cheap-ass teams like that, they're the ones hurting baseball. The teams that are constantly in the bottom half of the league and spending every single season. I've said this for years now. Everyone wants to blame the Dodgers. Everyone wants to blame the Yankees. But why are we punishing the teams? Why do we want to blame the teams who are trying to win? We're mad at the Dodgers because they just keep going and getting every star imaginable. Good. Because if the Reds did that, for everyone out there that's mad at what the Dodgers are doing, if the Reds were doing it, would you be mad? You would not. So that's how I know it's truly not a problem. It's only a problem because our team's not doing it. So rather than direct our anger towards the Dodgers, get mad at the Castellinis. Sell the team, Bob. Yes, I am urging the Reds to find an owner who will go out there and spend the money. I said this the other day, and no, I'm not talking politics, so everyone relax. But if Elon Musk bought the Cincinnati Reds, do you think that the Reds would still be cheap, or do you think that the Reds would be also doing what the Dodgers are doing? I think the Reds would be doing what the Dodgers are doing if they had Elon Musk as their owner. That means it's not a market problem. It's an ownership problem. Yes, the Castellinis might be rich compared to us, but they're poor on the ownership side. Get a super rich owner. It doesn't matter about your market. I mean, the Mets weren't one of the highest spending teams in baseball for the longest time. Now go look at who their owner is, and now look at how much money they're spending when it's all said and done. So That's what's wild. To me, it's not about the market size. I don't want to hear about the market size. At the end of the day, it comes down to what is your ownership willing to spend. So I don't blame the Dodgers. I don't blame the Yankees. I don't blame the high-spending teams of baseball. I blame the poor teams. I love the Reds, but the Reds are a bigger problem in baseball than the Dodgers. The Dodgers spending money on the stars is killing baseball. How about the fact that the Reds are going to let Ellie De La Cruz walk in 3 years? How about the fact that the Blue Jays have a star player in Vlad Guerrero Jr., and they're going to let him walk in 1 year? At the end of this upcoming season, he will be a free agent and he will be a Dodger. That's my problem at the end of the day when it comes to that. So either way. All right, Justin Kinner with you here, 1410 ESPN Radio, live at Wright State University's Nutter Center. We'll step away for a few minutes. Wright State assistant coach Cole Gentry, we're going to hang out. We're going to talk about the Raiders matchup with their rival Northern Kentucky coming up later on tonight. Coach Gentry has a cool story. He was actually a part of one of the Raiders NCAA tournament teams from back in 2018. He was an assistant coach for Colorado State the last couple years, and of course jumped over here to Wright State to be a part of Clint Sargent's staff, who's the Raiders' first-year head coach as well. So we're going to talk with Cole Gentry when we come back. We'll get back into the Reds conversation. I do want to talk about Nick Martinez and all of that fun stuff coming up. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. We'll be right back.
Hello, it's John Kozik, founder and president of TurboTrack Realty, and I buy for cash. Give us a call today for an all-cash offer at 614-470-2000, 614-470-2000. I buy vacant properties, inherited homes, divorce situations, death in the family. I even buy my tenants won't pay me the rent houses. Give us a call today for an all-cash offer at 614-470-2000, 614-470-2000.
Veterans, were you exposed to harmful burn pit smoke while serving overseas? The Department of Veterans Affairs has recognized and is providing benefits to veterans who suffer with asthma, rhinitis, and sinusitis as a result of burn pit exposure. If you served in the Southwest Asia Theater of Operations or Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Syria, or Djibouti and suffer from any respiratory illnesses that you believe is a result of exposure to burn pits, contact the Montgomery County Veterans Service Commission at 937-225-4801.
Now's your chance. Tackle those bigger projects with an 11% rebate on everything at Menards. Transform your home with a new Dakota closet. Build your dream bathroom and save on luxury tubs and showers. Customize your kitchen with Clearview cabinetry. Or start your big garage project. Get an 11% rebate on everything at Menards. 11% mail-in rebate is a merchandise credit check. Good on future in-store purchases. See Menards.com for details.
Save big money at Menards.
Would you like to earn top dollar and work for a company that cares about you? Well, KTH Parts Industries in St. Paris is hiring second shift production associates. Improve your income and earn an increased hourly wage of $21.66 per hour. KTH not only offers great pay, but excellent benefits, including medical, dental, and 401k. Not to mention, KTH is a short drive from home, only minutes from Bell Fountain, Troy, Piqua, and Urbana. Make a change today and be valued by a company that cares about you. Apply at KTH.net, an equal opportunity employer.
By now, you should know Audio Etc. has all the same sales and deals on TVs and projectors as everyone else. But did you know we also have some of the world's best hi-fi? Hi, this is Kirby from Audio Etc. And we do have some of the best home theater, high-fidelity gear on the planet. Not only do we have your favorite brands like Klipsch speakers and SVS subwoofers, but audiophile greats from Bowers & Wilkins, Kef, NAD, Marantz, Cambridge, Mark Levinson, and plenty of vinyl and tube gear. Plus exotics you only see in the magazines. Stop by today and visit Audio Etc.'s crazy cool showroom and see and audition the best audio and video has to offer. While you're in, check out our huge selection of pre-owned vintage gear. A great way to afford great gear otherwise out of reach, or revisit old classics. Audio Etc. Sound advice you can trust. Audio Etc. 551 Congress Park Drive at the corner of Paragon in Centerville, or call 434-9770.
Audio Etc. Crazy cool showroom.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer? Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. And now save 50% on the new Sleep Number limited edition smart bed. Limited time. Exclusively at a Sleep Number store near you. Learn more at sleepnumber.com.
Progressive knows finding your new home was a dream come true. You wanted a colonial with high ceilings, hardwood floors, and a peaceful neighborhood. And you found it. Now, every Saturday at 6 a.m., you get to wake to the sound of your neighbor's leaf blower. Progressive can't save you from your noisy neighbors, but we can save you money when you bundle your home and auto with us. Get a quote at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers not available in all states.
Business taxes. Was stressing about all the time and all the money you spent on your taxes.
This is my bill?
Now Business Taxes is a TurboTax small business expert who does your taxes for you and offers year-round advice at no additional cost, so you can keep more money in your business. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com/business. Only available with TurboTax Live full service.
I'm Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I learned about atrial fibrillation the hard way. My symptoms would come and go. Shortness of breath, fatigue. I kept going. Then I got so lightheaded, I couldn't. My doctor said I have AFib, so I'm about 5 times more likely to have a stroke. Other symptoms, irregular heartbeat, heart racing, chest pain can come and go, but the risk of stroke stays. If you have symptoms, tell a doctor. Visit notimetowait.com.
Sponsored by Bristol-Myers Squibb and Pfizer.
And we welcome you back. It's the Justin Kinner Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. Hey, it's Justin Kinner with you here. Tax season is finally upon us, and I'm sure you're thinking about who's going to be doing your taxes. Try our friends over at Arrowhead Tax Service in New Carlisle. Call Michael Maxwell today at 937-543-5770. They're ready to serve you at 113 West Jefferson Street in New Carlisle. Arrowhead Tax Service gives back to the community through athletics, nonprofits, and all new clients. Save 10% off online at arrowheadtaxservice.com, where their target is your demand. Justin Kinner back with you here, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. The Raiders in action later on tonight. Dayton's radio home for Wright State basketball. Northern Kentucky going to be in town tonight, a rivalry game, of course, and hanging out with us to talk about that matchup and the season as a whole, as there's only 3 games remaining, including tonight. Assistant Coach Cole Gentry hanging out with us. Appreciate you giving us some time on game day. Of course, I know you guys are super busy on these days, but no, appreciate you coming on. Obviously a coach now, but being a former Wright State player and playing in this rivalry as well, I get a lot of, Northern Kentucky, Wright State, like how big of a rivalry is that? You felt the difference when you play this team back in your playing days, right? Like there's a big difference when you play Northern Kentucky compared to other teams, even in-state teams for that.
Yeah, no, like you said, it's definitely a little bit different when it's Northern Kentucky. And when we went to Northern Kentucky or when they came here, it's just the energy in the building is different right when you come in. And I know in the past it's been games for first place or for championships or regular season championships, conference championships. They're on ESPN. And while that may not be the case tonight, we tried to explain to our guys how much this game means to the people who have been in the program, the fans who have been around forever for both teams. And so we gave them a history lesson. I think it was Wednesday on the rivalry, just so the new guys understand. And obviously we have some older guys that have been through it. So it is a big game, and it's a big game for them too. So it'll come down to the same things it always comes down to for every game, but there is definitely a different energy.
It's not your first year coaching, obviously your first year here, but like you're a few years out of your playing career, of course. Like how has that coaching transition been? Obviously a couple years at Colorado State, and then you, of course, did Clint call you? You reach out to Clint. How did that work out? How did you get tied in back to coming here to be part of the coaching staff?
Yeah, so I knew I wanted to get into coaching after I finished my career. I went and played overseas for 1 year in England.
Yeah.
And then through my connection with Coach Brian Cooley, who was an assistant at Wright State when I was here, he's at Colorado State now. He got in contact with me, explained that they had a GA spot open. So that's how I got out to Colorado State, was there for the past 2 years. And then, kind of by luck or just by chance, Coach Nagy leaves to Southern Illinois. And that night, Coach Sargent called me and was like, hey, this is what's happening here. If you want to come back, like I'd love to have you. And he didn't have to really even explain the role. I knew once he offered me the spot, I didn't really care what the logistics looked like, what the role was, all that stuff. I just wanted to be back. So I was very grateful, very thankful that he asked me to come back, because this is kind of home to me. So
obviously you played for Scott Nagy. You played for this coach, pretty much this coaching staff. Of course, what was a bigger shock? You get the call from Clint and it's, hey, Scott's leaving.
Yeah.
Is that the bigger shock, or was it the, oh, damn, so Scott's leaving and you're the head coach?
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot, I'm sure, for you to kind of wrap your head around.
So it was funny. We were in a meeting at Colorado State, and I'm kind of wrapping up my graduate assistant spot and just kind of figuring out what's next for me. And you see on Twitter, of course, it breaks on Twitter that Scott Nagy is expected to accept.
People were tracking his flights.
Yeah.
People are sending me stuff like, look, this flight. I'm like, what? We're tracking Scott Nagy's flights. Are out of date now. It's wild time.
So Twitter says Scott Nagy accepts Southern Illinois head coaching job, or is expected to accept. And I'm sitting next to Brian Cooley. I'm like, what's going on here? And he of course is like, yeah, I've known for a little bit. I didn't tell you, but I've kind of known. And so my head's spinning. I was like, well, who's gonna be the next coach? He goes, well, I think it's gonna be Sarge. And yeah, then that's the night later that night. So go through the day, and that's all I know about it. Obviously, Coach Sargent's probably doing a million different things, trying to figure out what's going on here. But yeah, he calls me. It's probably 11 o'clock Eastern. So it was getting late in the night for him, over Mountain Time a little earlier. But yeah, he called me that same night that I found out on Twitter that Nagy was taking the job at Southern.
Kind of a weird year last year too, because if I'm not mistaken, Wright State opened up the season at Colorado State. So they got obviously Cooley and then yourself over there. So you start the season and then you kind of end the season reuniting with Wright State, when it's all said and done. But that was a wild turnaround as well. And obviously with Clint getting the job, and then of course you getting over here to be a part of the staff. Obviously there's a lot of differences in the personalities of both you playing for Scott and playing for Clint technically, and now coaching with Clint. Has to be a lot of similarities between him and Scott, but at the same time, there has to be some differences too. What kind of adjustment was that playing for Clint as the assistant coach, but now being an assistant coach to him being the head coach?
Yeah. And I think, Coach Nagy and Sarge have some differences and some similarities. And I think, for him being around Coach Nagy for so long, he played for him and then coached with him for such a long time, that you naturally are going to pick up the things you like about him, because Coach Nagy is obviously a great coach, very successful, very decorated coach. And so Sarge has definitely picked up things that he wants to continue on that Coach Nagy would have taught him. And from my experience with Coach Sargent as an assistant, he was always very in tune with how you're doing on the court, but mostly off the court in your life, just reading people. And he's very intuitive. He's very smart. And so I see the same things from him as a head coach that I saw as a player when he was an assistant.
Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Cole Gentry hanging out with us again, assistant coach for Wright State. Obviously played at Wright State. It was funny the other night at the coaches show. One thing that Clint brought up, that one of his goals is to, because we have the conference tournament coming up around the corner, and that was mentioned. And he said one of his goals is, to win the regular season title, because there's just longevity to that. That means you went through the peaks and the valleys throughout the season. You battled through a lot of adversity, and that's tough to do. You did that twice when you were here. Just talk about your playing days going back to that. Obviously, we talked about you now being a part of the staff, but obviously playing here, being a part of a ton of success, obviously winning the regular season twice, NIT appearances, NCAA tournament appearances. Just talk about, again, you being a part of that as a player, knowing how capable this program is of doing that and bringing that experience with you here now, a part of the coaching staff.
Yeah, no, it was, it was a time of my life, to be honest. And I'd be lying if I said playing the NCAA tournament wasn't probably the coolest thing I ever did basketball-wise in my life. But like you mentioned, winning the regular season truly is more representative probably of the best team in the league, because it is 20 games, whatever the schedule is that year, and you have to be good at home, on the road, versus a neutral site tournament. Usually the best teams win, and usually that's how it happens. But as you know, anything can happen in a neutral site conference tournament. And so it is important to us to get back to that level of, expecting to win the regular season or being right in contention at this point in the year. And that's something that we're preaching to the guys every day. And that's something that I do think we're taking the steps to get back to that level of those teams that were, regular season champions, conference champions. And I think we're taking the right steps.
Obviously, you bring back a good core of experienced players this year with Alex Hubricks and, of course, Brandon Knoll. And obviously, you're getting a good list of familiar names from last year that come back. So you're familiar with some, not others, and now you're well acquainted with these guys by this point of the season. expectations at the beginning of the season to where you're at now. Obviously, this is not record-wise what you guys had anticipated. Shout to Nick Phillips. I know he's sitting in here. I have to. Like, it's what Chris does. It's what Coach Brown does. But no, his great notes over here. But no, unfortunately, like, you guys have been involved in so many close games.
Yeah.
Like, it's like one of those where just one or two plays differently happens in any of these. It's a much different talking point at this point with 3 games left in the regular season. I think 7 games of one possession, losing by possession or in overtime. It's like, yes, you want to do the, moral victory of like, we're so close, guys. But at the same time, it just seems like it's wearing now. Like, you could just see it's like, okay, it's no longer okay just to be in it with these teams. Like, we have to close these out at some point. Running out of time in the regular season. Obviously, I'm sure it's tough juggling that locker room right now. What has it been like trying to navigate through some of these struggles while also acknowledging, guys, we're pretty dang good too. Like, it's not like we're getting our behinds kicked. Like, we're a good basketball team. How is it trying to get that message across to this locker room right now?
Yeah, it's frustrating. I know it's frustrating for the guys first and foremost. It's frustrating for the coaches. It's frustrating for the fans. You know, losing close games. Nobody wants to lose in general, but losing close games, it probably hurts even a little bit more. And you just, at this point in the year, you just have to hold that belief and just keep holding that belief that, things can turn. And every year there are teams that, struggle through certain parts of the season or have a few bad games and just find it. They find it at the right time. And so you don't have a choice other than just to keep that belief and keep doing the things every day, whether it's your practice habits, your when you're away from the court habits, all that stuff matters. And you just have to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing because you don't know when it can turn. And it could turn tonight. It can turn against Cleveland State. It can turn against IU Indy. And then you just kind of can carry that momentum the same way a team like Cleveland State did earlier this year when they won 11, 12 games in a row, I think. It was some along those lines. But you just never know. So you have to create that belief and you have to hold on to that belief even when it's hard, even when you lose a close game in Milwaukee, even when you lose a close game at Youngstown or a close game to Fort Wayne here. Because like you said, you're right in those games against these top teams in the league, in the standings. And so you just have to hold that belief. And it's a hard thing to do, especially when you're losing close games. But I think our guys have, they've rallied in the right way. They're not satisfied or they're not happy, just like everybody around the program is not necessarily happy with where we're at. But I think they're rallying the right way.
Last thing, again, Cole Gentry, Wright State assistant coach with us here, the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Obviously, Loud and Love, Grant Basile. You look at Brandon Knoll, from the time Coach Nagy got here, and it's just kind of continued on. Just having a dominating big has just been kind of, it'd be weird not to see a dominating post player right now for Wright State at this point. What makes Brandon Knoll different? Because, the 3 dominating bigs that we've talked about, Loud and Love and Grant Basile, there was nothing similar about those two. And it's like, I don't think there's a lot similar with Brandon Knoll to those guys as well. 3 dominant bigs, 3 different dominant bigs. How does Brandon Knoll separate from those two? Because, again, Horizon League preseason player of the year, just dominating over his last month, really all season, but just really caught fire with all the 20-plus point games, double-doubles, all of that. What makes him special? How is he different from the other previous great bigs that have been here over the last couple of years?
I would say the biggest difference for Brandon compared to Loudon and Grant is his versatility. And it starts defensively. He's very switchable. He's a switchable defender. We could realistically put him on all of Northern Kentucky's players and feel pretty good about the matchup, or don't feel like we're at a disadvantage with the matchup. And that's something that is really invaluable as a coach, being able to know, like, okay, man, if we're in foul trouble or if we have to go big or go small, we can put Brandon on, whether it's Trey Robinson tonight or Sam Vincent, where it's a big or a guard, like we can put him on them and feel like we have a good chance. And so that's probably the biggest difference, whereas Loudon was more, he's guarding 4s and 5s, and he's probably was a little more physical than Brandon, just in the paint and just imposing kind of his will, just scoring around the basket, whereas Brandon is definitely better on the perimeter. And he's a little more versatile, even offensively, too. He can pick, he can pop, he can roll, he can score in the paint, he can score from 3, he can handle, he can throw passes. So I would say that's the difference. And I'd say Grant Basile is kind of a mixture of the two of them. If I had to kind of put him in what category, he's kind of the mixture, whereas Loudon's more the brute force. Grant's kind of a mixture, and Brandon just kind of do it all big. And so, like you said, it's been great to kind of see his. Because quick Brandon Knoll story, when I came back from going overseas, I was just about to go overseas, and I was working out with him, and he hadn't played yet. This is his second year, going into his third year. He hadn't been on the court yet because he had the red shirts, And to see where he's come from, that workout from that time has been really impressive. And it's a testament to his work ethic, his work in the weight room, on the court. He's one of the most regimented kids we have with his routine, and it shows. And you hope the young guys are catching that from these older guys and just seeing like, hey, he had a lot of struggles early on in his career with injuries, with maybe self-belief of like, man, when am I going to get on the court? What's it going to look like? And to see him kind of come out the other side and be the confident player he is today is pretty cool.
All right, Wright State, Northern Kentucky coming up later on tonight, 7 o'clock to tip off right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. 6:45 coverage begins with our Premier Health pregame show. Then Chris Collins and Jim Brown will have the call. Again, appreciate you, Cole Gentry, giving us some time here, Wright State assistant coach, former Wright State player, looking to get a big win tonight against the Norse in Northern Kentucky. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back. Hour number 2 coming up next.
Have you ever told a friend
Oh, I'm fine.
when you really felt,
Just so overwhelmed.
or sent a text
Can't sleep. Are you awake?
when you couldn't find the words to say?
I'm scared to be alone with my thoughts right now.
Then this is your sign to reach out to the 988 Lifeline for 24/7 free confidential support. You don't have to hide how you feel. Text, call, or chat anytime.
Hauer Music, one of the nation's largest music stores, is having an inventory sale. Yes, Hauer Music in Centerville is now celebrating 88 years with their largest sale of the year. Hauer's has all your musical instrument needs, including guitars, drums, keyboards, pianos, band instruments, and so much more. Hauer Music was voted the #1 independent music store in Ohio by Guitar Player magazine and is an Eclipse Award winner from the Better Business Bureau. Award-winning sales and service is why Hauer's is the best in Dayton. Hauer Music inventory sale going on now.
Hey, Cordell Transportation is now hiring experienced Class A CDL drivers, excellent pay, benefits, and a $5,000 sign-on bonus. Apply right now online at CordellTransportation.com. Do it right now. Driven to succeed.
Patrick was way behind on his IRS taxes.
I was in way over my head. The total amount ended up being somewhere just over $30,000. $30,000.
Then the IRS came to collect.
Started getting letter after letter. A lien had been filed against me. They were going to basically hang me completely out to dry.
He had to do something.
That's when I reached out to Optima Tax Relief.
Patrick's life quickly got a lot easier.
It was very easy, pretty much hands off. They picked up the ball and ran with it.
And how'd it go?
I couldn't believe it. I had to ask 2 or 3 times. I saved an incredible amount of money.
How does Patrick feel about Optima?
Couldn't be happier. They definitely helped me. Optima Tax Relief, the best place to call. They're the best in the business.
Do what Patrick did and call Optima Tax Relief for a free consultation. Call 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460.
Optima Tax Relief.
Testimonial from an actual client. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Let's see, if something costs less, a lot less, but people are actually happier with it, that sounds like something to look into. And that's MetaShare. Maybe you've heard joining MetaShare can save you or your family up to $500 a month, and that's huge. But it's also true. People are just happier with it. They love being part of something that reflects and promotes their values and what they believe in. MetaShare works, too. It's been around for 30 years now, and members have shared more than $7 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network. So yeah, really, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care, whether you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan that you're happy with. Here you go. You can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. A very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. It's 877-26-BIBLE. That's 877-26-BIBLE. 877-26-BIBLE.
It's like being trapped in a cage. And I know that sounds dramatic, but your breathing triangle problem has got you trapped. And once you're freed, you're going to be able to live the life that you're missing out on. Now, this can simply mean experiencing the true pleasure of breathing freely. It will mean better sleep and more energy. And the worry of this problem any more affecting your life is going to be gone. Because in almost every case, when Advent has solved a breathing triangle problem, it's a one and done. Because we're not in the business of delivering Band-Aids. We want to fix your nasal breathing problem for good. We don't want you to be a lifelong patient. We want you to be our next success story.
Isn't it time you break free from that cage? Take the next step. Go to adventknows.com to schedule your appointment because Advent knows when you breathe well, you live better.
Breathe well with simple solutions. AdventKnows.com.
Results may vary. Most insurance accept.
If you're 55 and up, T-Mobile has plans built just for you. 2 lines of unlimited for just $30 a line. That's a 45% savings compared to Verizon and AT&T. But don't just take our word for it.
It's not just the savings that are great with our T-Mobile plan. There's all this value from all these other things that T-Mobile offers.
T-Mobile has been such a savings for us.
We love it.
Switch today and get 2 free 5G phones like the Motorola Edge with Turbo Power charging that gives you power for the day in just 15 minutes. And customers 55 and up can get 2 lines of talk, text, and data for only $30 a line. Go to T-Mobile.com/choice55 to learn more. With AutoPay plus taxes and fees, plus $5 per line without AutoPay. Debit or bank account required. 45% off 2 lines versus AT&T Starter and Verizon Welcome. Plan benefits vary. Motorola Edge on us with 24 monthly bill credits and new line for well-qualified customers, plus tax and $35 per line connection charge. See details at T-Mobile.com. Motorola Edge requires 68-watt charger. Charger sold separately. Actual performance will vary based on usage and configuration.
ZipRecruiter is the place. ZipRecruiter is the place for talented teachers, savvy software developers, and master mixologists. ZipRecruiter is the place where you meet all these people and more. That's because ZipRecruiter is the place for job seekers who are looking for new opportunities. In fact, ZipRecruiter helps 10 million people with their job search every day, so you can find the right candidates right away. It's no wonder that ZipRecruiter is the place for skilled skydiving instructors, accomplished airbrush artists, and proficient pediatricians. But if you're not using ZipRecruiter to hire, you're missing out. ZipRecruiter is the place that's so confident it can make your hiring easier that it lets you try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. So if you want the right candidates for all your roles, ZipRecruiter is the place to go. Try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free. Never miss out on great candidates with ZipRecruiter.
Confidence is knowing you're ready to handle whatever comes your way. That's what it feels like to take on your workday with Cintas. They make sure your AEDs are up to date, your fire extinguishers are tested and inspected, your floor mats are cleaned and delivered, and your workwear looks good, feels good, and is freshly laundered with the Cintas Apparel Plus program. So are you ready to take on today? Visit Cintas.com and get ready for the workday.
Progressive knows finding your new home was a dream come true. You wanted a walk-up with central air and a skylight, and you found it. Now, every Friday night, you get to fall asleep to the sound of your downstairs neighbors' dance parties. Progressive can't save you from your noisy neighbors, but we can save you money when you bundle your home and auto with us. Get a quote at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers not available in all states.
Coming to you live from the Superbook Sports Studios in Kettering. You're listening to Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM.
All right, everybody, we welcome you back. It's the Justin Kinner Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. Adam is back in the WING studios, so we can open up the phone lines. If you do want to call and jump in on the conversation, you are more than welcome to do so. It is hour number 2. We appreciate you guys tuning in and hanging out with us again here on a Friday. Wright State going to be in action coming up later on tonight. We'll have the action right here. 7 o'clock, the tip-off, 6:45 with our Premier Health Raider pregame show. That'll be coming up after the Justin Kinner Show coming up later on this evening. So Northern Kentucky in town. Right now, we have sent out 14 tickets. So, again, there's more emails coming through. Continue to send in. If you want tickets for tonight's game, please. We have a few more pairs left. So if you message in, we'll get those. They're digital, so we'll be able to email those to you. So go to the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page, send me your email in the chat, and we will make sure to get that sent over to you during these commercial breaks coming up. So a couple NFL headlines that have kind of been coming throughout the day. How about the New Orleans Saints are going to hire Brandon Staley, former Dayton Flyer. They're gonna hire Brandon Staley as their defensive coordinator. Staley again had 2 winning records in a playoff appearance in 3 seasons as the Chargers head coach. Only 42 years old, and he's going to, of course, reunite with Kellen Moore in New Orleans. Kellen Moore, of course, the new head coach for the New Orleans Saints. They get their defensive coordinator. I kind of forgot about Staley. He was one of the bigger names that was available for teams to be able to land as their DC, and I think the Saints got a good one. I'm not a fan of Staley, the head coach. I don't like. He was aggressive, which you kind of like to a certain point, but stubbornly aggressive and would not learn from his mistakes in the past. It's kind of like what you see a little bit with, obviously, Campbell over with the Lions, but the Lions have had way more success, obviously, and way more of the aggressive decisions that Campbell has made. They've paid off significantly more than the decisions of Staley throughout that run. Some other news out of the NFL, of course, this involves your Cincinnati Bengals. The Cincinnati Bengals, no surprise here. They have released defensive tackle Sheldon Rankins after just 1 year with the team. The move saves the Bengals an additional $9.6 million in salary cap space. So keep that in mind. Look, we kind of knew, I think that puts them at about that 50. It's in the mid 50s or 60 range as far as available cap space kind of heading in to this offseason. And obviously right now, all eyes are on the T. Higgins situation. Some stuff that's come out throughout the week. Jamar Chase is not just looking to become the highest paid wide receiver in football. He is very aggressive in regards to getting in around that 40 a year range. He's going to get paid and going to get paid a lot. You'd have to think, man, if you would have just got this deal done last offseason, how much better off the Bengals would be in this particular situation. Now you find yourself, in these isolated situations, taking care of Jamar Chase is not a big deal. In an isolated situation, taking care of your star wide receiver T. Higgins is not a big deal. In an isolated situation, getting an extension done with Trey Hendrickson, not a big deal. But when you constantly kick the can down the road and you constantly just keep slapping franchise tags on players and not operating in good faith in negotiations, like going to Jamar Chase and saying, hey, let's start, talking about an extension early, and then not following through with it, and then basically setting the tone for drama as camp kicks off like last year, they've caused a lot of their own problems. And right now you're trying to get a $40 million a year deal done with Jamar Chase, a $30 million deal a year done with, obviously, T. Higgins. And then you're probably looking at that 25 to 30 for, of course, Hendrickson when it's all said and done. So we're talking about $130 million just for one season coming up that they have to finalize per year. $130 million a year that they're trying to finalize just with these 3 individuals, assuming that they are going to get a deal done with all 3 of them. And that's before addressing everything else. So you could say with a $50 million that they have cleared up. And then, by the way, there's going to be other cap casualties. There's a lot of names that are being floated around out there. Rankins is probably the most predictable one. I don't really know. That Rankins thing was weird from the very beginning. Obviously, it was a good get. I remember not overreacting to it because I thought it was a mistake to let DJ Reader go. And people brought up well, how are you mad that they let DJ Reader go? You ended up getting Sheldon Rankins. And I'm like, I get that you got Sheldon Rankins, but all you did was replace DJ Reader. You didn't improve. You know what I mean? That was my point about Rankins, not really adding him to the list of big additions in the offseason for the Bengals, mainly because you didn't add Rankins. You just filled a hole with Rankins. You just replaced DJ Reader with Rankins. You didn't improve. You didn't get better. In fact, you technically got worse because although Reader was banged up for some games in that final season in Cincinnati, Rankins hardly played at all. And I'm not even sure if all of it was injury. There was there was just barely any communication at all as far as what was truly going on with Rankins, who just never seemed to be available. And there was not a whole lot of digging as far as to what was going on there. But his time in Cincinnati short-lived. He's cut, and the Bengals free up again, as I mentioned, about $9.6 million in salary cap space. And they need every dollar that they can get their hands on right now as they try to plug a lot of holes on this roster. Obviously, Joe Burrow's your guy. All right, you're going to get the deal done with Jamar Chase. You got T. Higgins. You're going to get Trey Hendrickson taken care of. You're going to put a lot of time, sweat, money, equity into getting those 3 deals done. And then that's when the real work begins. Because once you get that stressful stuff taken care of, then you got to start making changes to upgrade the roster. Upgrade a roster that somehow had Super Bowl expectations a year ago and then ultimately missed the playoffs when it was all said and done. They have a lot of work to do this offseason, but it's not something we haven't already talked about. That's just the reality of it. But Sheldon Rankins, one of a few names that you could probably expect to see cut here for the Cincinnati Bengals. Other news, this one doesn't surprise me, and I think you're going to start to see more of this throughout college football. A lot of people are making a big deal about Nebraska and Tennessee. This is from the college football front. Nebraska and Tennessee have nixed their home-and-home plan that was supposed to kick off next in 2026. So that's a good non-conference little matchup, assuming that Nebraska was going to continue to improve. Obviously, Rule now the head coach out there and has had Nebraska, very competitive since arriving there. But Nebraska, Tennessee, that's a pretty fun non-conference matchup, Big Ten against the SEC. But with all the complaining about how the seeding worked for the college football playoff and for the teams that got in, Indiana was such an interesting talking point because Indiana was proof right there to not just teams like Indiana, but even to the good teams, do not challenge yourself in the non-con. Indiana didn't play anyone worthy in the non-conference, and they didn't play anyone good in the Big Ten. And actually, that's not true. They played one good team in the Big Ten, and the one good team that they played is the team that they lost by multiple possessions to. You didn't beat anyone of substance in your non-con. You didn't play anyone good in your conference. And the only good team that you did play was Ohio State, and you lost by double digits. But what Indiana ended up showing people and showing teams like Nebraska, showing teams like that, like who are never going to be powers again, most likely, is what you've shown them is we don't need impressive wins on our resume. We just need wins. You don't need impressive wins. You don't need resume building wins. You just need to make sure you don't have losses. And adding Tennessee to your schedule, if you are Nebraska, is stupid. It doesn't make any sense. In fact, let me go to this. I do want to pull this up. I am kind of curious. Let's see, 2026 Nebraska football schedule. I am kind of curious to see what's on this schedule. Like I said, when it comes to the playoff, a 12-team playoff, and probably by the time you get to 2026, this thing's going to be expanded. But playing Tennessee and picking up a loss against Tennessee, knowing that you're going to play a lot of good competition in the Big Ten, what is the point? Here's the 2026 schedule for Nebraska. Now, if you're just tuning in, we welcome you in. It's the Justin Kinner Show. You're probably wondering, why do we care about Nebraska football? Because Nebraska football is doing something that they're getting criticized for today, and I'm praising them for it. I would not challenge if I'm an athletic director for college football right now, I do not put one tough opponent on my schedule. If I'm a Big Ten team, an SEC team, I am not putting one tough opponent in my non-conference slate. Not one. They just canceled that series with Tennessee. They're getting criticized for it. And the question I have is why? It's good business. Take a look. Here's who they are playing in 2026, Nebraska. They're playing the Ohio Bobcats. They're playing Bowling Green and North Dakota, the Fighting Hawks. That's their three non-conference matchups for the 2026 season. Now you're saying, so if they beat those teams and they start out 3-0, they're going to play Illinois in week 4. That's probably 4-0. Nebraska's going to start out 4-0. 4 wins right off the bat, right? You're 4-0. Not 3-1, not 2-2. You are 4-0. That's all that matters. Wins. Not the quality of the wins. It's the quantity of the wins that matter. And Nebraska was smart as hell, if you ask me, to get rid of that Tennessee series, because now you're going to have Ohio, Bowling Green, North Dakota. And then here's your Big Ten slate. You're at Illinois. You're at Iowa. You are at Michigan State, which is wild to me. Again, those are your away games. And then you have to play Indiana. You have to play Maryland, Ohio State, Washington, and Oregon. You play Ohio State and Oregon that season. If you play Ohio State and Oregon, those are 2 games right there that you're probably losing. You could probably circle Ohio State and Oregon and just know you're losing those 2 games. You're walking into the season with 2 losses if you are Nebraska at this point. So why put Tennessee on the schedule and risk walking into the season with 3 losses on your schedule? If you go into the season playing Bowling Green, North Dakota, and you're playing Ohio, the Bobcats out of the MAC, right? Those are 3 wins right there. Why risk picking up another one? Now, you can say that is weak. That is weak mentally. That's a weak mentality. I call that good business. Why risk it? Because here's the deal. If you beat Tennessee, if you beat Tennessee, it's a long shot if you are, of course, Nebraska at this point anyways. At least considering who Tennessee is right now, they seem to be a very good established program in the SEC, a very competitive program. I still take them over Nebraska every day of the week. But there's no point in putting Tennessee on there. What do you gain? What do you gain if you beat Tennessee but you lose to Ohio State and Oregon by double digits? What have you really gained right there? You don't really gain much. It kind of helps it stops the bleeding a little bit, but it's not propelling you to the playoffs. Look at Indiana last year. They played nobody in the non-con. They beat up on all the bad teams that they played in the Big Ten. They played one good team in Ohio State, lost by double digits. But because that was their only loss, and because that only loss kept them out of the Big Ten championship game, they avoided a second loss. They got in the playoff. Play the long game. And the long game is don't lose. Don't lose. Don't increase the probability of you picking up a loss. I have no problem with Nebraska taking them off the schedule. I think that was actually smart when it's all said and done. Here's the schedule this season for Nebraska. Remember, they're going to be taking on the Cincinnati Bearcats at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City in week 1. But they're playing Cincinnati, they're playing Akron, and the HCU Huskies. That's who they're playing in their first 3 weeks of the season. Talking, of course, about Nebraska. Then they have a bye week on September 27th, but they're going to be playing Michigan State, Minnesota, Maryland, Northwestern. Then they're going to play USC. They're going to play Penn State, who is a national championship favorite or one of the favorite contenders there. But, like, I'm looking at Nebraska's schedule. It's not terrible. Like Cincinnati, you're probably going to beat Cincinnati. I don't think Cincinnati's very good. You know, you should beat Akron, HCU. You know, Michigan's going to be that Michigan-Nebraska game on September 20th. 2025, of course, you know, here we are, February, already looking ahead to college football, but that's where I'm at mentally. Let's just be clear. I'm really looking for, look, Michigan, you know, they're going to be in the top 25. They're going to be, you know, much improved from last season, right? Michigan has to go play at Nebraska next year in week 4. I love that matchup. You know, if Nebraska can start out 4-0, and of course you have Areola as your, as your quarterback, you're good to go. You're like, I think they're going to be in good shape. But there's no point putting tough teams in your non-con if you don't have to. Roger says, don't tell Shaw Michigan is going to be good. I think Michigan's going to be much improved. I don't know if they're going to be national championship contenders by any means, but they, you know, that defense is something, and that's been the identity of Michigan for quite some time. You know, can they get a quarterback that can throw the ball more than 5 yards down the field? That's going to be the key for them, of course. But obviously, we know the quarterback that they paid a lot of money to. Is he going to start as a true freshman? I don't know. I guess with the money that's being thrown at him, the expectations are that he needs to go in there and play and start as a true freshman, but nonetheless. All right, it's the Justin Kinner Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. I appreciate Cole Gentry, assistant coach for Wright State, giving us some time just a little bit ago. Again, he was a part of multiple regular season titles here with Wright State, NCAA tournament appearance. He was an assistant coach at Colorado State the last couple of years and is now part of Clint Sargent's staff here in his first year at Wright State as an assistant coach. But I do appreciate him popping up here on a game day. Wright State, Northern Kentucky coming up later on tonight. Let's see. Jesse, how are you, sir? He sent in, I see your email. I'm going to send you those tickets here on this commercial break coming up. If you want tickets to watch the Raiders take on their rival Northern Kentucky tonight at the Netter Center, go to the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page, and you can DM me your email address, and I will start sending out those tickets during this commercial break coming up. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting note about Nebraska canceling their home and home with Tennessee. I think that makes all the sense in the world, and I think anybody that's complaining and ripping them for it, did you not watch what happened this past year? Did you not watch how many bad teams made the playoff because they literally played absolutely nobody throughout the regular season? So I have no problem with that whatsoever. All right, now we'll talk some more Reds when we come back. I want to talk about Nick Martinez. Is he the second best pitcher that the Reds have in that rotation? We are so like we want to put Nick Lodolo in that spot so bad, and I don't know if he actually is. Nick Martinez was dominant last year. Nick Martinez's numbers. So Charlie Goldsmith put out an interesting piece on him. Nick Martinez was better than even I thought last year. And I guarantee you, after our conversation, when we come back, you're going to realize he was much better than you thought as well. So let's get to that when we come back. More of the Justin Kinner Show next, right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
ESPN 1410 Wing AM weather.
The forecast is partly cloudy and 16 tonight. Decrease in clouds and 35 for the day tomorrow. And on Sunday, we're looking at sunshine and 42. I'm Rick Schrempf for 1410 ESPN Radio.
Sherry, what have you done to your hair? What do you mean? Does it not look good? It doesn't look good. It looks freaking amazing. I can't believe how thick and healthy it looks. Oh, I must know your secret. No secret. It's hair volume from New Nordic. Hair volume, huh? Well, it certainly lives up to its name. Your hair has never looked so thick. It is gorgeous. I was so tired of having thin and brittle hair. Ugh, and the shedding. So I figured I'd give hair volume a try. Needless to say, I'm thrilled with the results. Hey, where are you going? I'm going to pick up some hair volume right now. My reunion's next month and I want my hair to look as good as yours.
Hair Volume is the best-selling hair tablet in the world and one of many award-winning natural health products from New Nordic, the #1 supplier of dietary supplements in Scandinavia. Purchase at newnordicusa.com or your local CVS. Available as a tablet or delicious gummy. Help your hair look full, voluminous, and beautiful again at newnordicusa.com or CVS.
Ohio has over 920,000 diabetics. If you are a diabetic, take a step in the right direction by having your feet checked routinely by a podiatric physician, the most qualified doctors to care for your feet. Adding a podiatrist to your healthcare team can help you better manage the effects of diabetes on your feet. Ohio Foot and Ankle Medical Association podiatric physicians are located throughout the state. For more information or to find a member of the Ohio Foot and Ankle Medical Association near you, visit ohiofoot.org.
The Montgomery County Clerk of Courts Help Center brings the courthouse to the community with its weekly outreach programs to local churches, libraries, and community centers. We help you navigate the legal system. Find a location near you at courthouse2u.com. Brought to you by Montgomery County Clerk of Courts, Mike Foley.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop to opt out. Consult a doctor prior to use.
You look amazing. What have you been doing?
You've heard of Ozempic, Wegovy, and the other GLP-1 medications, right? Well, I found this great company called Zelfie. If you qualify, their providers can prescribe medications like Ozempic and Wegovy and other GLP-1 medications that are 80 to 90% less expensive, all 100% online.
I can get GLP-1 medications for 80 to 90% less and do it all online? No doctor's office or pharmacy?
Yes, Zelfie can help provide you with semaglutide or tirzepatide, the active ingredients in Ozempic and other expensive GLP-1s, but for 80 to 90% less.
How do I get started with Zelfie?
Just send them a text.
Text COMMON to 200-300 to get started today with Zelfie to see if you're eligible. Get the same active ingredients in Wegovy or Ozempic, but for 80 to 90% less and 100% online. Don't wait. Text COMMON to 200-300 right now for a link to your exclusive offer. Text COMMON to 200-300. COMMON to 200-300.
Seems everything costs more these days. Gas, groceries, and when's the last time you checked your wireless bill? Yikes. When it comes to big wireless, if you're staying, you may be overpaying. Here's how to get the same fast, reliable nationwide coverage without the big wireless bill. Switch to Consumer Cellular. Plans start at just $20 a month, and that's not a short-term promo. Our US-based experts will get you switched and saving in about 20 minutes. Call 1-888-FREEDOM or visit consumercellular.com and start saving today. Plans include $5 credit for auto pay and e-billing.
Hi, welcome to Staples. Hi, I hear Staples can print it all for my business.
Oh, if you can think it, Staples can print it and will beat any print quote.
Oh, great. I'm thinking new brochures and yard signs.
No problem.
I'm thinking calendars, t-shirts, and pens.
Totally.
I'm thinking Staples is the place for printing.
I thought you might think that.
Right now at Staples, get up to $250 off your print purchase. Ends 4/5 exclusions apply. Visit staples.com/print for offer details. Price match guarantee valid in store and staples.com/print. Visit staples.com/price match for details.
It's the biggest savings event of the year. Menards 11% rebate sale is here. Save big money on everything you need for any project. We've got something for everyone. Homeowners, contractors, DIYers, the kids, and even grandma. Get an 11% rebate on everything at Menards.
Save big money at Menards.
11% mail-in rebate is a merchandise credit check. Good on future in-store purchases. See menards.com for details.
Do you know what's accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide? If you guessed Discover, you guessed right. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
All right, and we welcome you back. Justin Kinner with you here on Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. Jesse, I'm sending you tickets here shortly in a few minutes. Gavin Patch, I just sent you yours. Michael, your tickets were just sent as well. Again, if you want tickets, Wright State, Northern Kentucky tonight at the Nutter Center. If you want tickets, send me, go to the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page, follow the page, and send a DM, and I'll make sure to get those tickets over to you right away. Again, second to last home game of the regular season. Only 3 games remaining here in the college basketball slate for Wright State, and we'll have Wright State, Northern Kentucky later on tonight. Jim Brown back. He was not able to go to Green Bay, so I had to go on the Wisconsin trip to fill in for him this past weekend. But he's back at it, and him and Chris will be on the call coming up later on tonight, 7 o'clock. The tip-off, 6:45, is when our Premier Health Raiders pregame coverage begins, so keep that in mind. I want to go back to the Reds real quick. Obviously, at this point, Hunter Green is the top guy, right? Like, we know that. Look at, he had the Heisman. My fault. Sorry. Whatever. Football. We're just talking college football. Give me a break. Cy Young finalist last year, at least in the top 10 as far as that goes, and had a fantastic season. And it was kind of I remember when the season started, the big question about Hunter Green is like, he looks dominant early, but he's not able to get, like, he's only going 4 or 5 innings, and then he's being pulled. And it's like he was throwing a lot of pitches early. And then all of a sudden something clicked for him around the midway point, and then he was rolling. Unfortunately, he kind of got banged up kind of heading into the month of September. And it was one of those where I don't think there's no way he would have won the Cy Young last year, because the Reds obviously needed to be better, I think, for him to be in position to do so. Plus, he wasn't better than Paul Skeens. And Skeens is going to be like, I don't know if Hunter Green will ever be as good as that. I love Paul Skeens. I don't know if Hunter will ever be as good as that, but he's only, he's still very young, and the Reds, got that deal done. We're talking about the Bengals earlier, not getting deals done early. The Reds got a deal done early with Hunter Green, and it was going to be one of those where even if he was just an average pitcher, you were paying him an average pitcher's amount worth of money, or if he ended up being really, really good, you were getting an elite pitcher for an average pitcher's worth of money. It was going to be a great deal for the Reds no matter what, and he's been fantastic. But who's the number 2 pitcher? Earlier in the week, I remember saying for the Reds to win this division, for the Reds, are the Reds a playoff team? I think that they are. Are they good enough to win this division? I think they're good enough to win the division as long as of course, as this rotation, I think, lives up to expectations. So, for instance, Hunter Green is your opening day starter. In fact, by the way, we're Dayton's Radio Home for Wright State basketball. We're also Dayton's Radio Home for Cincinnati Reds baseball. We'll have spring training action for you tomorrow at 3:30. And Hunter Green's going to be on the mound right off the bat. Usually for Cactus League stuff like this, like, you usually don't see starting pitchers like this. It's usually for guys who are fighting to make the team, and that's not the case. I mean, I think it's kind of cool that Francona is setting the tone early, putting Hunter Green out there, putting everyone on notice that he's ready to rock. Hunter Green came out, I think today or yesterday, put out an interview saying that, he's actually added some stuff to his game and that this is the best shape he's ever been in. We keep hearing that a lot. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but again, there's a lot of guys that seem to be locked in heading into camp. Hunter Green's one of those, and that's a good thing. But who's the number 2? Because it's one thing to have Hunter Green be the ace of this rotation, and I believe that he is. But who's that number 2 guy for the Reds? Is it Nick Lodolo? And the reason I'm saying is it Nick Lodolo, I'm not saying is it supposed to be Nick Lodolo. Not do you want it to be Nick Lodolo. Is it Nick Lodolo? Is Nick Lodolo the second best pitcher in this rotation for the Cincinnati Reds? I don't think we can technically say that. And I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing. I think Nick Martinez is the second best pitcher in this rotation. And my mind has recently been changed up on this. Like, if you think back to last year when Nick Martinez, who started the season out in the bullpen and was very good in the bullpen, but, the Reds started to get really banged up. They needed some options in that rotation. The whole reason that Rhett Lauder even made his debut in September last year is because they literally had nobody. He only made a start or 2 at Louisville before they ultimately called him up. And I was concerned that he wouldn't be ready. But everyone was like, well, Kenner, relax. All these rookies have been called up and have debuted great for the Reds. Those rookies that debuted for the Reds, they were called up according to plan, according to the timeline. Like, they were called up according to the projected schedule for when they expected them to be ready to be called up. Rhett Lauder was thrown to the Wolves because they literally had no one in the rotation, and the Reds wouldn't pull the trigger on going to get a guy like a Johnny Cueto or just some veteran pitcher to at least throw out there to eat some innings. Now, that worked out. Rhett Lauder was fantastic. Don't get me wrong. But the one reason Nick Martinez was in that rotation late in the season is because, for one, he was pitching really well, but 2, because they needed him to. So no matter how good Nick Martinez looked, I never looked at Nick Martinez as one of the top pitchers in baseball, but Charlie Goldsmith put out a very good article about how good he was last year. Like, listen to this. Listen to the first paragraph or two of this article from Charlie Goldsmith. We're going to have him on here next week, and I'm a big fan. Charlie, just a great person, but just one of the best reporters out there. And ever since he got to spring training, the content coming out has just been fantastic. Give him a follow on socials if you can. But Charlie Goldsmith put this out, okay? He says, last September, as I was researching for my Cy Young Award vote, I texted a source who knows a lot about pitching for his thoughts on who should be on the ballot. Okay? Charlie says that the first text from the source named 7 of the most well-known pitchers in baseball. He threw out the name of Chris Sale, Zach Wheeler, Paul Skeens, Chris Sale. Chris Sale, he put in there twice, sorry. Hunter Green, obviously. Logan Webb's name is in there. Charlie Goldsmith said, that was the first text. The follow-up text with a bunch of question marks put Nick Martinez. Now I kind of thought that was silly as well. Martinez did not end up being on Charlie Goldsmith's Cy Young Award ballot or any others for that matter. He's not viewed by fans as a frontline starting pitcher. But when the Reds offered Martinez that 1-year, $21 million qualifying offer, there was some outside skepticism. About making Martinez the highest paid player on the Reds. And I think that's what's also getting in my way too. Like, I feel like they overpaid him. So I'm not willing to put him in the category of the Reds' second best pitcher. Like, we're almost using what he's paid against him. And I think what he's paid can work against him if he doesn't pitch well throughout, just like anyone that's paid a lot of money and they're not doing their job. But you know what I mean? Like, Nick Martinez, as Charlie goes on to say, he interviews Derek Johnson regarding Martinez, and Derek Johnson says that he is highly underrated. If you were ever around him, you'd realize how valuable and really special that he is. Now, listen to these numbers. This is where I'm starting to really lean towards, man, I think Nick Martinez, from a numbers perspective, truly is the second best pitcher in this rotation. Not Nick Lodolo. I think it's Nick Martinez. Martinez ranked 16th in all of baseball in pitching WAR last year, slotting in ahead of Logan Webb, and Aaron Nola, by the way. A couple of those guys were Cy Young finalists as well. Martinez was elite at limited hard contact, limiting walks, and generating swing and miss opportunities. Martinez, of course, spent half the season in the bullpen. He's still ranked 80th in Major League Baseball in innings pitched last year. Only 11 pitchers in baseball, guys. Only 11 pitchers last year threw more innings and had a better ERA than he did. Like, I think Nick Martinez, the only reason we don't give him the true respect that he deserves is because of the fact that we don't look at him as a starting pitcher for one. We looked at him as just filling a role because the Reds were banged up in the rotation. And then when he got that $21 million, we're looking at pitchers around baseball who make that much. Nick Martinez does not fit that mold. He's also 34 years old. I don't know. I think he's the second best pitcher for the Reds. I don't think it's Nick Lodolo. I don't. I think it needs to be Nick Lodolo, big picture for the Reds. Like, I think if the Reds want to be a consistent playoff contender, NL Central contender, I think it needs to be Nick Lodolo. But statistically, it's Nick Martinez. It's Hunter Green's your ace. Nick Martinez is the second best pitcher in this rotation. And I think that's fantastic. I think that the fact that you brought in a Brady Singer on top of that, if you have obviously Hunter Green, your opening day starter, Nick Lodolo is throwing game 2 against the San Francisco Giants, and then you have a Brady Singer to go close out the series. Those 3 pitchers right there, all good enough to start off the season with the sweep, or at least taking 2 or 3 at the very least, right? They're good. I mean, those 3. But then you start to look at the back half of the rotation, and you start to look at the setup guys there of, okay, how are you going to win? You know, when you start a series in the middle of your rotation, because you know what I mean. Like, when you're going to go up against some good quality teams, and they play some good teams in the month of September. What if you've already gone through your top of the rotation guys in the first, to close out a series against a scrub team? But man, you got a good team coming up, and you got to throw out the middle of your rotation. If Nick Martinez is starting game 1 of a secondary series later on, I think you're in good shape. I think if Andrew Abbott is starting that, I love Andrew Abbott, especially early in the season. He needs to show that the progression throughout, that he doesn't slow down. But Rhett Lauder could be that guy. Look, the bottom line is the Reds have options. I think that I really love this rotation for the Reds. I do. I don't think it's the best in baseball, but I will say, a couple years ago, the last time they made the playoffs, that was the year that they had Luis Castillo. You had Sonny Gray, and then you had Cy Young winner, the first ever with the rich history of Reds baseball. It's wild that he was the very first Red ever to win the Cy Young, and Trevor Bauer. that was so top heavy, but the back of that rotation wasn't very good. You know what I mean? It wasn't very good in the back half. And I think that I would take this. If you go back to 2020, that you have Luis Castillo, Trevor Bauer, Sonny Gray. Do you want that rotation that's very top heavy, or would you like this rotation that has a lot of depth? As I've said before, if Rhett Lauder starts the season in Louisville, that means this is a much deeper rotation than I can remember in quite some time. I don't know the last time the Reds had this much depth in their pitching when it comes to the rotation. So we'll see. What up, Ron? Ron bringing that negativity that, he's so good at. Ron says, not being, again, the computer. Every single time I go to read something, this dang thing freezes on me. My apologies, everybody. There we go. It's back to running again. Jeez. Ron Howard says, not being a hater, but the Reds won't go anywhere with this pitching rotation. They're good, but average at best. Dollar Tree. I'm not one to defend the Reds from being a cheap organization, but the Brady Singer deal, they gave up a lot to get him. Nick Lodolo hasn't been paid yet because he hasn't been healthy enough, consistent enough to warrant a contract extension. They didn't spend a ton on Hunter Green, but I chalk that up to being good business. And I don't think you could say that they're a cheap organization when it comes to this, only because they did give Nick Martinez $21.5 million. I am saying this, Nick Martinez, I do not think that they overspent on him. He is their second best pitcher. He is their second best pitcher in this rotation, and it's a rotation that features a lot of really good pitchers. I have no problem with the money they gave to Martinez. He needs to live up to it. He needs to pitch and pick up where he did last year. Plus, you gave him $21.5 million for one more year. He's 34 years old. It's not like you gave him a 3 or 4 year deal at $21 million a year. Then I would have a problem with that $80 million contract, but that's not the case here. That's not the case. All right, good stuff. A lot of good college basketball action tonight and heading into the weekend. Wright State in action coming up later on tonight against Northern Kentucky. Dayton on the road taking on Loyola. We'll talk about that as they are trying to figure out just who the heck they are as they wrap up their regular season over the next couple of weeks as well. Ohio State got blown out against Northwestern. What is going on? I'm the biggest Jake Diebler fan out there. I want it to work so bad for Jake Diebler at Ohio State, but Dusty May right now is doing such a good job at Michigan that I'm beginning to wonder if Ohio State maybe made a mistake. We'll talk about that when we come back. Plus, we'll take your phone calls, 937-518-1410. More of the Justin Kinner Show when we come back.
Let's see. If something costs less, a lot less, but people are actually happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that's MetaShare. Maybe you've heard joining MetaShare can save you or your family up to $500 a month, and that's huge, but it's also true. People are just happier with it. They love being part of something that reflects and promotes their values and what they believe in. MetaShare works, too. It's been around for 30 years now, and members have shared more than $7 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network, so yeah, really, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care, whether you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan that you're happy with. Here you go. You can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. A very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. It's 877-26-BIBLE. That's 877-26-BIBLE. 877-26-BIBLE.
Have you heard? Bath Creations has moved to their new location and showroom at 8741 North Kimmel Road in Clayton. This gives you even more opportunity to see the incredible amenities and craftsmanship Bath Creation offers. With Bath Creations, you get a beautiful, modern bathroom that is safe, comfortable, and affordable. Attention first responders, veterans, and active military. Save an additional $500 off your purchase. Visit at 8741 North Kimmel Road in Clayton or online at mybathcreations.com and get a new bath today.
Hey, it's Justin Kinner, and as football winds down, college basketball is gearing up. Fans are ready to see which teams will prove they are ready to shine in March and who will be seen in San Antonio. You can get in on all of the action from tip-off to the final whistle at ESPN Bet Sportsbook. Right now, new ESPN Bet Sportsbook customers can bet $10 to get $100 in bonus bets and unlock 30 days of ESPN Plus. Download the app and sign up with promo code Radio100 to get started today. Must be 21 and older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
I'm Terry Krupp of Laird's Tax and Accounting, serving this area's tax and accounting needs for over 80 years. One of the most rewarding aspects of our jobs as tax preparers is that we have families that have used our services for generations. Laird's Tax and Accounting is a pioneer in our industry, being the first to offer new services. We stand behind your return if the IRS has questions. We know the tax code and can make the difficult task of making your tax filing easier. Relax. Contact us at 937-325-6571. Information at lairdstax.com.
Folks, the Colonel here with Homestead Feed and Supply. You've asked for it, and the homesteaders, well, they went out and got it. Homestead Feed and Supply is now a full-blown Purina dealer. You heard that right. Homestead carries Purina feed products, including Fitter, Honor Show Feeds, Depth Charge. Heck, they've even got the golden ticket. Stop in to Homestead Feed and Supply, 1833 North Dayton Lakeview Road, New Carlisle, or visit the Homestead Feed and Supply Facebook page. Tell them the Colonel sent you.
Have you ever told a friend
Oh, I'm fine.
when you really felt,
Just so overwhelmed.
or sent a text
Can't sleep. Are you awake?
when you couldn't find the words to say?
I'm scared to be alone with my thoughts right now.
Then this is your sign to reach out to the 988 Lifeline for 24/7 free confidential support. You don't have to hide how you feel. Text, call, or chat anytime.
Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed's sponsored jobs feature helps you stand out and hire fast. Start at Indeed.com/credit.
Back, it's the Justin Kinner Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. We're live here at Wright State University's Nutter Center again. Throughout the season, just been doing the show here on days where they have home games and just kind of hanging out here again ahead of their tip-off again tonight against Northern Kentucky. Cole Gentry, Raiders assistant coach, played for Wright State, part of their NCAA tournament team back in 18, was at Colorado State as an assistant the last couple of years, came here to join Clint Sargent in his first year as head coach of Wright State, replacing Scott Nagy, who left after last year. But appreciate him coming up, especially on game day and giving us some time and hanging out. But well, I'm closing out this hour. We talked about this on Chatterbox earlier today on Off the Bench, and they put out the list of, it was 24/7 Sports, put out a list of the coaches facing the most pressure in 2025, the hot seat rankings, if that's what you want to call it. And for those who are streaming live on YouTube, on the ESPN Dayton YouTube channel, or of course on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page, take a look at this. I thought this was interesting. Again, here is the top 5 of the names on this list who are facing the most pressure, if that's what you want to call it, right? So right at the top of the list, no surprise there, Brent Venables with Oklahoma comes in at number 1 on the list. I have no problem with Brent Venables being at the top of the list as far as facing the most pressure in the hot seat heading into 2025. I thought that when he got to Oklahoma, I thought that was going to be a huge move. I thought that was great for a program like Oklahoma, who during their time in the Big 12, it was all about offensive firepower. You know, you went from Bob Stoops, who was a well-rounded coach, but obviously in the Big 12, it was more about the offense than defense. You get Lincoln Riley, and the big headline was just, of course, all of the offensive, Heisman, winning quarterbacks in Oklahoma's offense, and that carried over obviously to USC. But Venables was a defensive guy that came over from Clemson and was supposed to kind of balance out Oklahoma, which is definitely needed when you're going over to the SEC, to have a physical identity. Venables provided that for Dabo Swinney at Clemson, has not been able to do that for Oklahoma. And I think he has a lot to prove in this year coming up for the Sooners when it's all said and done. Mike Gundy being on the list at number 2, it's kind of hard to put him on a list of a hot seat list or a pressure list when, I mean, he's been the most of all the coaches on here. He's the most consistent. They win a lot of games every year. They don't win enough big games, but they win a lot of games every year. And every year they bring him back. I can't put Mike Gundy on this list. I'm not going to put him on a list that we're going to hold him to a higher standard than his own program has not than his own program has held him to. I'm going to take Gundy off this list. Mike Norvell, the head coach at Florida State, coming in at number 3. No problem with that. I think he should be higher. My biggest problem with him was from 2 years ago when Florida State missed the college football playoff. And by the way, the playoff justified it. They gave him the explanation, and instead he continued to throw a temper tantrum. And I think as a head coach, you have a responsibility to set the tone and set an example for your players. And the fact that, he set a bad tone. He sent a bad message for his locker room, basically being a victim. He showed that by going on all those shows and being the victim and making excuses and blaming everybody else, that it made it okay in that locker room, and it let a lot of doubt creep into that locker room. And you could tell that that's why, for one, all those players just said, well, basically by throwing this much of a temper tantrum for not making the playoff, you have told us that anything that happens after this doesn't matter. So half his roster decided to sit out to go to the NFL. They got their ass kicked in the bowl game. And then the very next season, this past season, they start by getting upset in Ireland. I think they were in Ireland where they lost to Georgia Tech. And we thought, man, Georgia Tech just pulled off one of the biggest upsets of the college football season, and then found out Georgia Tech did not pull off an upset, that Florida State just stinks. They stunk. They were no good. They weren't any good, right? Like, I think Norvell, I've never seen a program fall off like that. Even with Sharon Moore, who takes over for Harbaugh at Michigan, who's facing possible sanctions and has a lot of eyes on the program, had a ton of guys leave for the NFL. A lot of guys transferred out when Harbaugh left. We watched that national champion take a major step back, but they have a lot of NFL talent on that roster. They still won some football games. They finished above 500. They beat Ohio State. They beat Alabama to close out the regular season. I have, Michigan. That looked like a team that lost a lot of guys to the NFL, that lost a head coach, and still was able to maintain somewhat of an identity of what allowed them to be successful over the last, half decade. No, not cheating, although that was part of it, but being a physical team. What was there left at Florida State? What about Florida State showed an identity that would exist for a Mike Norvell team? There was none. I'm out on Mike Norvell. I have no problem with him being on this list. I think he should be higher, actually. Luke Fickell coming in at number 4. And then Brian Kelly for LSU coming in at number 5. So there you go. Again, that was 24/7 Sports kind of putting up their pressure rankings, if that's what you want to call it. But so Luke Fickell's an interesting name that popped up there. Obviously, Matt Patricia ends up getting the defensive coordinator gig for Ohio State. I was adamant that I thought Luke Fickell was going to be the defensive coordinator for Ohio State, and I thought that he should have. I thought that he should have taken it. I had people that reached out and said, "See, Kinner, you don't know what the hell you're talking about." Not only did he not take the DC job, he got a huge extension at Wisconsin. Well, let me ask you. I may have been wrong as far as him being the defensive coordinator, but you don't think that conversation happened behind closed doors? Why do you think Wisconsin gave him an extension, by the way? What has he done to deserve the extension? Wisconsin football has been horrible at recruiting. Wisconsin football has not improved from a win-loss standpoint since Fickell arrived, in Madison. Their transfer portal rankings are horrible. Like, there's not one positive. There's nothing about the Wisconsin football program that is trending in the right direction. So why the hell did he get a raise? Maybe, just maybe, there was a team sniffing around trying to convince him to leave his head coaching gig to come be a coordinator because the blueprint seemed pretty successful for Chip Kelly. You look at Chip Kelly, who was the head coach at UCLA, was kind of drowning a bit. He was going to be fired at the end of this past season if he would have remained the head coach at UCLA because there wasn't a whole lot there to work with. They weren't going to win anything of substance. And instead, he left a head coaching gig at a Big Ten university out of California to go be a coordinator at Ohio State. And it paid off. The NFL wanted nothing to do with Chip Kelly. He was a laughingstock in the NFL from his last stint there before. No other big school wanted anything to do with Chip Kelly, especially if he would have got fired from UCLA. But he went to Ohio State. He was the offensive coordinator for the national championship winning Buckeyes. And now all of a sudden the NFL, you had NFL teams lining up for his services. The same thing could have happened for Luke Fickell. The same thing should have happened for Luke Fickell. Luke Fickell kind of goofy for turning down the Ohio State defensive coordinator job, assuming it was offered to him, to go back to Wisconsin to accept a pay raise and to accept an extension just so they could fire him whenever they fail this upcoming season. Anyone think Wisconsin's going to be worth the damn in 25? Raise your hand. Oh, yeah, I'm not raising my hand. You're not raising your hand. Fickle's not even raising his hand. You guys, he's going to be fired. Fickle will be unemployed by the end of the 2025-26 season. It is what it is. It is what it is. Luke Fickle should have taken the DC job. But it doesn't surprise me that he's on that list. The Brian Kelly thing is weird. I'm not a Brian Kelly defender, but I don't blame Brian Kelly for leaving Notre Dame. People were ripping him during the national championship buildup, saying that, oh man, Chip Kelly said he left Notre Dame, or Brian Kelly, left Notre Dame because he didn't feel he could win a national championship there, when that's technically not what he said. He wanted to go somewhere where you can consistently build a national championship contender. And even though Notre Dame got to the national championship this year and they won a few playoff games to get there, let's not act like they went through Murderer's Row, by the way. You played Indiana. You know what I mean? You played some bad teams throughout to get there. You didn't play a who's who of talent to get to the national championship game. And, Ohio State, although the score was closer, the score was closer than what the game actually indicated at the end of the day. So let's just be clear from that perspective. But it is tough to win a national championship consistently at Notre Dame. But you go to LSU, as far as I'm concerned, LSU, the fact that you had three consecutive head coaches win a national championship there, that's a program that you can win national championships at. I have no problem for him leaving Notre Dame. Obviously, he's underachieved the first 2 years at LSU. I don't think he's on the hot seat. I think it would be fair to put him on the hot seat at the end of this upcoming season if they don't achieve at least a deep playoff run of some capacity. But I'm not as anti Brian Kelly as some of you are. Now he's left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths just because of the way he handled the Cincinnati exit, the way he handled the Notre Dame exit. He doesn't have a lot of people pulling for him. Let's just put it that way. One name that's not on that list, again, of the hot seat rankings for college football already as we sit here in February, heading into March here. I would put Scott Satterfield at Cincinnati at the very top of that list. I don't see how Scott Satterfield survives this upcoming season. Now, Sorsby was a heck of a quarterback last year. In fact, Sorsby started improving so much that at a certain point we did start having the conversation: is Cincinnati going to be able to afford him at quarterback? There's no way that another bigger school is not going to come and pluck him away. But Sorsby actually regressed as the season went on, regressed to the point to where Cincinnati was able to retain his services because he wasn't that impressive by the end of the year. But at the end of the day, I think that he's done after this upcoming season. I do think that Satterfield is going to be gone. I also think that Luke Fickell will be fired by Wisconsin still. And I think that Luke Fickell will be the next head coach of the Bearcats. I think they will reunite. We saw the same thing happen with Frost over there with Nebraska. Hi, no, you're more than welcome to come in. They told me you'd be coming in. In fact, if that popcorn is for me, let me see that. I'm going to show everyone on camera just how big this bowl of popcorn is. I'm assuming this isn't for me, but it is pretty impressive. I'm not going to lie. But no, Satterfield, I think, is going to be gone. And I think that Luke Fickell is going to be gone from Wisconsin as well. And I think that that's what's going to end up happening is you're going to end up with Luke Fickell back at Cincinnati. We saw Scott Frost when he failed, obviously, at Nebraska. He is now back at UCF. I think we're going to see the same thing happen. Obviously, we're going to see the same thing happen with Fickell when it's all said and done. Marquise on YouTube, how are you? He says Brian Kelly has to make the playoff. He has a Heisman-level quarterback, no doubt. I mean, look, you're at LSU. You're in the SEC. I think you're one of the powers over there. I think at the very least, if we're talking about bad seasons at LSU, it should be early playoff exits, not missing the playoffs. Brian Kelly should not miss the playoffs at LSU. Bottom line. Should not miss the playoffs at LSU. I agree with you 100%. He says, if not, adios. Yes, I do believe he will be let go. Not let go, but I think the seat will be boiling if he does not get it done next year. Marquise also says Mario Cristobal needs to be on that list as well. There's a lot of names that should be. Look, I think there's a lot of coaches that are facing a lot more pressure. I thought the expansion of the playoff was going to cool the seats of a lot of coaches out there because there would be more opportunities to make the playoffs. But all it has done is it has created more realistic expectations for a lot more programs, which means now there's a lot more programs underachieving, which means there's a lot more coaches on the hot seat. I thought it would alleviate that problem. I think it's actually created more issues at the end of the day when it comes to all of that. But it's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio, live here at Wright State University's Nutter Center. A lot of college basketball action tonight, including the Wright State Raiders taking on Northern Kentucky, 7 o'clock, the tip-off, 6:45, our Premier Health Raiders pregame coverage will begin. Big games out of the Big East. Villanova 15-12 at home, welcoming in number 16 Marquette. Marquette 20-6. They are a 1.5 favorite according to our friends over at ESPN Bet, the official sports book of the Justin Kinner Show. By the way, Marquette a 1.5 favorite on the road at Villanova. Big win out of the Big Ten. We just talked about Dusty May in Michigan. They got a big win over Ohio State this past weekend. I'm the biggest Jake Diebler fan. I was really happy when he got the job. There was a lot of names being floated around when Chris Holtmann was let go by Ohio State last year, who was going to come in and get it. I thought Jake Diebler was cool seeing him kind of get the interim coach run, but they responded, and they did such a good job that ultimately ended up working out to where he got the job. I didn't think it was a bad hire. I'm not willing to say it's a bad hire right now. But Michigan was a lot further behind the Ohio State program last year when the seasons came to an end. And when you look at the quick turnaround that Dusty May has done with Michigan, it's pretty damn impressive. Michigan is 20-5 on the season. They're 12-2 in the Big Ten. The Big Ten, one of the tougher conferences out there. They're sitting at the top, okay? Michigan's 20-5 overall. They're the number 12 team in the country. It's unfair. Obviously, I shouldn't say it's unfair. These guys are paid a lot of money. I'm not going to say it's unfair. It's unfortunate for Diebler that things are going so inconsistent. They just got their behinds whooped by Northwestern last night. That is unacceptable. All right, they're at home, and they got their tails whooped by Northwestern. That is unacceptable if you are Jake Diebler in Ohio State. Now, I'm not calling for his job, but it is hard to defend him and say that, hey, he's immune to any kind of criticism at this point, because I do think he's going to be constantly tied to the Dusty May hire at Michigan, and Dusty May and Michigan got the best of Jake Diebler and the Buckeyes at the shot this past weekend. So, but Michigan and Michigan State, the rivalry game tonight, ESPN Bet has Michigan favored by 3.5. It's a top 25 showdown. Number 14, Michigan State at number 12, Michigan. Coming up later. Those are your only two top 25 matchups tonight. Local matchup here tonight, the Dayton Flyers 18-8 on the season, 8-5 in A10 play. They are on the road at Loyola. Dayton is a 1.5 favorite according to ESPN Bet. And we remember what happened the last time these two teams played. I think it was Letang. I think it was Malachi Smith who, as time expired, got the ball and just a full court pass. It was beautiful pass. I mean, he was able to get it right to the spot, to obviously the high points where only Letang can go up there and grab it, pull it down, and lay it in as time expired. And that's how things went down the last time that these two teams played, when that was at UD Arena. But Dayton is third in the A10. They are 4 games back of George Mason and VCU. They're a game up over. They're tied. I'm sorry. With technically Loyola has the tiebreaker, or they have the tiebreaker over Loyola because they have that win. But Loyola looking to get a win tonight on their home floor. Dayton just hasn't looked right. I know that they've been finding ways to win, but I mean, it's wild when you think about how they've come away. When you look at the streak that they're on now, they are 4-1 in their last 5, but 93-76. They technically blew out Fordham, but it was an ugly game until they pulled away late in the second half. You beat Duquesne this past weekend. I don't know why Anthony Grant decided to try and be a football coach. I don't know. I think he forgot he was a basketball coach. He drew up a football play. He had everyone lining up, like they were wide receivers along the baseline. I have no clue what inspired him to call that play, but Malachi Smith in Malachi Smith fashion turned the ball over, and Duquesne had a chance to win that. They tied it up, and the next thing you know, there was a phantom foul, and Dayton got lucky. Again, Dayton's been very lucky to win a good chunk of games over the last month and a half. That's not me being a hater. That's just the reality of it. There's no way you could feel good about that Duquesne game, but hey, you feel good because you got to win. The reason I say that is because obviously Dayton's in the situation now where they have to win their conference tournament to win. They don't look at themselves as a mid-major program. They believe that they should be getting at-large bids. The problem is they think that they should. That's never been who they are consistently. They are a mid-major basketball team, and that's what mid-major basketball teams have to do, is to win their conference tournament. I'm not saying that as a slight just because they have an identity crisis and don't know who the heck they are. They take it that way, but the bottom line is they should feel good about a win over Duquesne, no matter how ugly it was. They should feel good about a win over Fordham. They should feel good about the win over Davidson, 69-63. Obviously, they lose to VCU 73-68. They don't feel good about that loss, but you should feel good about these wins. They don't feel good about any of these wins half the time because they're not doing it in convincing fashion. This is the same team that nearly beat North Carolina. This is the same team that nearly beat top 10 team in the country, obviously in Iowa State. This is the same team that blew out UConn in Maui. They're 2-2 against teams in the top 10. They're 2-3 against top 25 teams, but yet they struggle to beat Duquesne. They struggle. They have to pull away late against Fordham. You're losing to VCU. You're not even – I hear all this talk about the Big East this, the Big East that. Big deal when you can't win the A-10, when you can't dominate the A-10, but you're talking about these bigger conferences. It drives me nuts. I don't want to hear about the Big East anymore. I don't want to hear about leaving the A-10. Master that first. Figure out how to dominate the A-10. Then you can go be a part of some bigger conferences. But my goodness. But they got their hands full against Loyola tonight. They're at Loyola and at Rhode Island, their next two games. And then they'll, of course, have back-to-back home games against Richmond and St. Louis, and then VCU to close out the regular season on March 7th. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Let's see. Jesse says, don't forget about me. Oh, no. I see, Jesse, I got your tickets. I'm sending them now. My apologies. Marquise says, exactly. Xavier dominated the A-10 and got to move on. Yeah, they have. It's an identity crisis, man. They think there's something that they're not. Dayton is not a Big East team. They're just not. And worry about beating the A-10. They get so upset when they don't get acknowledged for who they are on the hardwood, and I don't even think they know who they are on the hardwood. But that's frustrating. Yeah, they're not Xavier. They're not Cincinnati. And look, and I talked about this. And by the way, it's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. It's 5:02. We're about to wrap up this conversation here. But I talk about this with Elliot on Off the Bench all the time. Elliot's a big Bearcat fan, and I remember when the Bearcats were in the American Conference. When the Bearcats would, they'd get, some big wins over top 25 teams. It meant so much more doing that in the American Conference. When you'd make the NCAA tournament, you get a tournament win. That meant so much. It was so cool coming out of the American Conference and doing that. By the way, I was a big American Conference fan when they had Wichita State and Cincinnati and Houston. I thought that was, obviously Memphis. I loved that conference when those teams were all over there. That was one of my favorite basketball conferences. But when Cincinnati achieved things over there, it was more enjoyable because I don't think the ceiling was expected to be that high. So you were accomplishing more realistic goals. They're miserable in the Big 12 right now. Cincinnati has some really good players. All right. And they've have some good wins on the season, but because they are now in a bigger conference, they have higher expectations. What they've accomplished this year, if they would have done that in the American Conference, the fan base would be so excited right now. But because you're in the Big 12 and you're facing better teams every single night and you have much more resistance, they're not enjoying themselves because the goal of being a Big 12 team is to be an Elite 8 Final Four type quality team. And that's just not the Bearcats. So you constantly feel like you're failing because you're in a bigger conference and the expectations have changed. And that's my message to Dayton is, how are you trying to go to a bigger if you're miserable now, barely being able to compete in the A-10, why do you want to go to a bigger conference where you won't compete there at all because you can't even compete in the A-10? If you're miserable now, how much more miserable do you think you're going to be when that time comes? I'm watching it with Cincinnati. They are not enjoying themselves as much since joining the Big 12. I'm pretty sure their athletic director loves the money that's coming in with being a part of the Power Four, right? I'm, a high major program. But I guarantee you, they were having more fun in the American Conference. It makes better business sense to be in the Big 12, but they were having more fun in the American Conference. Dayton, learn to have fun in the A-10. Learn to dominate the A-10. We'll see if they can get it done tonight against Loyola. Rivalry game for the Raiders coming up later on tonight. No way to sugarcoat it. Wright State coming off of an embarrassing loss against Green Bay this past weekend. There's no sugarcoating it. Obviously coming back from Green Bay with the team, people always want to bring it up oh, man, you don't have anything to say about the loss against Green Bay? What do you want me to say? The players know it was a bad loss. I promise you the coaches know it's a bad loss. You just need me to say it so you feel better about it. I mean, I don't know why I need to say it. It was a horrible loss. And it was even more horrible loss because I do not like the head coach for the Green Bay Phoenix. Him and I got in a nice little verbal exchange earlier in the week. I'll let him know how I felt about how he handled a certain situation during the game, disrespecting one of the players on the Raider roster. So now that's my number one team I'm rooting against moving forward as any team that Doug Gottlieb is coaching. But, yeah, it was a bad loss last week. But that's the thing that people want to do. You know, if you go look at the season, have you guys taken a look at what Miami of Ohio is doing this year? Miami of Ohio has been fantastic. I mean, you go look at the MAC right now and you look at the success that Miami of Ohio is having. You go look at the success that a lot of Ohio teams are having over in the MAC. Miami of Ohio is 10-3 in the MAC. They are 19-7. All right, they've lost 7 times this season. That's it. One of those losses is against Wright State. None of you had nothing to say about, oh, man, Wright State, that's a heck of a win right there. But you lose against Green Bay, all of a sudden you seem to be Wright State aficionados all of a sudden. It was a bad loss. They're going to put that loss behind them. They got Northern Kentucky tonight, a rivalry game, second to final home game of the season. They're going to be just fine. But I love the MAC, by the way. The MAC, if you go look at it, so I'm looking at this right now. If you look at the standings, okay, the top 5 teams in the MAC are all Ohio teams. You have the Akron Zips sitting at the very top. Grossi's done a great job out there, by the way. They're 13-0. They're 21-5. Okay, and this is the problem. Like when, you know, if you go start to look at the bracketology, you know, you look at Akron. They're 13-0 in their conference. They're 21-5. They're not getting no at-large bid. They still have to win their conference tournament. They've dominated for months. They've dominated the MAC all regular season. But if they have one off night coming up here in a few weeks, their whole season was for nothing. And that's unfortunate, but that's the reality of college basketball for mid-major programs like this. And at the end of the day, you know, you could talk about the expansion of the NCAA tournament. Theoretically, you would think it gives programs and conferences like this a better shot. It doesn't. But, you know, Akron's sitting at the top, 13-0 in the MAC. Miami of Ohio, 10-3. Toledo, 9-4. Kent State, 8-5, as well as the Bobcats of Ohio, 8-5. The top 5 teams in the MAC, all Ohio teams. Pretty cool. Builds up right there in that conference. Keeping an eye on that as we get closer and closer to the conference tournament portion of the season. All right, well, that wraps it up for me here. The Justin Kinner Show coming at you live here from Wright State University's Nutter Center. Again, if you go to the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page at 5:30, I'm going to stop checking the messages. If you go to the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page and you want tickets to the Wright State and Northern Kentucky game for tonight, go to the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page and send me your email address, and I will get tickets sent to you right away. But I will close that at 5:30, so make sure you take advantage of that. If you are bored tonight, don't have anything going on, you want to come check out the Raiders, support them tonight in their second to final home game against their rival Northern Kentucky. Hopefully get a chance to meet some of you guys when you come out here as well. But have a great weekend. Until next week, this has been the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio.
Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply.
Hey, Dan, how you doing? Haven't seen you around the gym for a while.
Yeah, I've really fallen off. Since I turned 40, I just don't get the results I used to get.
Could be lower testosterone.
Lower T?
Yeah, I went through it a while back. Once you hit 40, your body has less free testosterone. I got Nugenix Total T, and it's made a huge difference for me.
I've seen that ad on TV. Is it for real?
Oh, yeah.